I can help you appreciate it. Search on Tony Benson or Tony Zubin.
Yeah. I can, sounds good.
For sure.
Recording in progress.
Yeah. Please rise as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome everyone to our city council meeting for April 22nd. Always nice to have a lot of engaged citizens here, so thank you for being here tonight. A couple reminders, actually just one. We do take breaks every 90 to 120 minutes between items, and we will begin our meeting with an open comment period. And I always take a second to go over some guidelines for the open comment period, since I know many of you are hoping to speak tonight. So this is an opportunity for anyone from the public to speak on an item that we will not be taking public testimony on later in a public hearing in the agenda. We have up to 2 minutes for a total of 20 minutes. I do see that we have about 40 minutes worth of speakers signed up tonight, so we'll need a consideration of a motion to suspend the rules to make sure those who are hoping to speak will speak. But I will say, please do keep your comments very concise, stay within the 2 minutes. And if you have already heard messaging, please try to minimize duplication of messaging. So we're sure to hear a broad range of perspectives and not a lot of duplication. As always, we ask that while we welcome your feedback on a number of city issues, that you are respectful in the delivery of your comments. Your comments should be directed at me as the presiding officer over the meeting. If you have materials to share, we have Acting Clerk Kasel sitting right here at the desk. You're welcome to pass those to her and she will make sure that we receive those. Participants are further encouraged to limit comments generally to topics that are within the scope and jurisdiction of the council's ability to affect policy. And note that we don't respond to your comments during the meeting, but if there are items that need follow-up by either staff or council, just make sure that Clerk Kasel has your information and we will follow up. All right, so we will go ahead. I will use the list that I have in front of me and I will call Lori Reinhardt up.
Good evening. I'm Lori Reinhardt, resident of Homestead Trail neighborhood. I am here speaking on behalf of our neighborhood. For several years, we have come before you requesting that you approve the development of affordable housing on the 4-lot parcel, which addresses one of the city's priorities while maintaining the smaller lot for our neighborhood garden, which serves another of the city's priorities. Building vibrant neighborhoods where people get to know and look out for each other, thus increasing a sense of belonging and safety. Our neighborhood garden has done just this for nearly a decade. Fruits and vegetables nourish many families in Homestead Trails, Homestead Edition, and 8.5 Street, as well as low-income older adults through Family Services Rochester. The little library and park bench by the garden finds children and families reading by the garden while walkers and bikers stop to engage in conversation at the garden. We ask again that you preserve the garden and add affordable housing on the larger parcel. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Reinhardt. And just, I forgot to mention, there's a little stoplight right here. You're welcome to sit down, just for those of you who are speaking, that turns yellow at 30 seconds and then red when you're out of time. There's also a timer on the wall to help you. Sean Kettlecamp.
My name is Sean Kettlecamp. I am from the researcher at the History Center of Olmsted County and here in Rochester. And I'm here about Silver Lake Park and want to voice my opinions as to why you insist on wasting our money in altering what's been a treasure for Rochester for more than 80 years. We're finding that that demolition by neglect is not just for buildings. Several thousands of dollars were spent acquiring the land to create the lake. Noted landscape architect Vincent Fian, who did other works around Minnesota, designed the lake. The lake was dug out by hand by men who labored for years to dig out stumps and brush and contour the land. When the Great Depression turned out to be as severe as it did become, the government's WPA program provided the funds and the extra labor to finish the project. The lake was dredged every few years, and the park department claimed that they were delighted with all of the free dirt and mud that was used from the dredging to contour and landscape other Rochester parks. I'm asking that the dam be left in place to dredge the lake and return the lake to its former glory. There can be a walking bridge or bike bridge put on the north end of the lake near the Broadway Bridge, just like the bridge that was put at the south end of the lake, down by the fire hall. All of this could be done for 1/1,000,000th the price of what's proposed for the dam removal and all this other mishigas that they talk about. And two, it's, you know, sport fishing. It's not a salmon run. It can be returned to its former glory for less money than it would cost to do all this other stuff.
Thanks, Ms.
Thank
Kettlecamp.
you.
Okay. I know people are really passionate about this, but we need to not applaud in the council chambers, please. Okay? Thank you. All right, Nick Miller.
Good evening, Council President Carlson, members of council. My name is Nick Miller. I live at 818 8th Avenue Southwest. I'm here this evening to express my heartfelt appreciation for the thoughtful housing-related proposals put forth by city staff in tonight's agenda. There's no single solution to our community's housing needs, but the development of a permanent home ownership creation program and the transfer of city-owned lots to the community land trusts are meaningful steps toward our goals. By lowering barriers to home ownership, we empower individuals and their families to build wealth and to thrive in our community. My own family received help in purchasing our first home in 2010 with $8,000 in federal tax credits, and a family member who was willing to provide a loan until the tax refund came through. At the time, my wife was in medical school and had been renting for several years after the 2008 economic crisis. That home will always be a special place for us. It's where we celebrated our first wedding anniversaries, welcomed our daughter Lucia into the world. It's also the reason that we were able to pay off student loans earlier and to buy another house when we had to move to a new city for my wife's residency and then fellowship training. Now that we're permanently rooted in Rochester, I feel so grateful for the help that allowed us to buy our first home nearly 15 years ago. I expect that through these housing proposals on tonight's agenda, more of our neighbors will one day be able to share similar stories. So thank you, council members, for funding the initial fee reimbursement pilot, and thanks to city staff for refining the program structure to make thoughtful improvements like increasing the length of occupancy to 5 years of owner occupancy and speeding up reimbursement timelines by allowing just administrative level approvals. I applaud the council and city staff for making these proposals possible, knowing that they will pave the way for a brighter future for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lucia Miller?
Hi, my name is Lucia Miller, and I'm in 4th grade at Gage Elementary. I'm here tonight because Rochester's trails are a big deal to kids like me. Without them, I wouldn't be able to go anywhere outside of my neighborhood without someone else driving me. I like to bike, so me and my family bike around town a lot. To get to my school, I take the bus every day, but next year I won't be able to. I could bike myself to school, but my mom and dad don't let me do it because it's too dangerous on the bridge by Silver Lake. When I get to the sidewalk on the bridge, it makes me feel nervous because there's no room to protect me from the cars, and the cars are driving really fast. If it were safe to cross, I could bike almost all the way to my school on the trails. I could also go to tea time sometimes for a snack on the way back home. Some of my friends live closer to school but can't safely get to my house because the bridge is the only way across. So I think it would be really cool for me and other kids to have a safe way to walk or bike through that part of town. My dad tells me that he got to bike to all of his friends' houses when he was a kid. I'm glad that there's a plan to protect Silver Lake and be able to add a path under the bridge that connects the trails. I'm also glad that it will make the water healthier for the animals that live there. Thank you for helping Rochester become safer and more fun for kids like me and my friends. I can't stay for the whole meeting tonight because I have MCAs this week, but if you want help hearing from more kids like me, I'd be excited to help you with that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. All right. That was applause worthy, but we'll move on. Greg Munson. Introduce yourself. You have 2 minutes.
My name is Greg Munson, and I'm here this evening representing the Friends of Silver Lake, a group of what I believe are thousands of Rochester citizens, more than the 150 that were out in the Rotunda foyer here about an hour ago. I'm going to be reading my comments tonight to ensure I make them brief and within my allotted time. Over the past 6 weeks, since receiving word the city had sent a dam removal grant proposal to the Lassard Sam's Outdoor Heritage Council last May, the Friends of Silver Lake have been spending considerable time trying to learn more about the proposal. With concerns it was sent without current council discussion or knowledge and contained misrepresentations of facts, we realized there needed to be more information provided to citizens as well as council members, accurate information regarding the grant proposal and the dam removal plans. So the Friends of Silver Lake would at this time like to invite Mr. Aaron Luckstein, who we understand is taking the lead on this project at Public Works, to a public meeting where he and another staff member, if he chooses, can come and provide information about the grant and city plans related to the dam removal proposal. The Friends would also plan to have 2 members of their leadership team present to present their concerns and direct questions to the city staff. This would be followed by opening the meeting for questions or comments directed to city staff or Friends members by members of the public who are present. The Friends have tentatively reserved a space at Peace Church from 6:30 to 8:30 on Thursday, May 9th, if that works for Mr. Luckstein and others. If not, we'd be glad to work with him to find a suitable date. As part of this informational meeting, we would hope council members would attend as a way to get more information on this very important issue to the citizens of Rochester. We'll look forward to hearing back from Mr. Luckstein if this invite will work for him. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Munson. All right, Jenny Baccioni or Bacciconi. And please correct my pronunciation.
You tried.
I tried. Bucciconi, it's a fabulous last name. Go
Thank
ahead.
you. Well, you know my name, Jenny Bucciconi, and I do not live on Silver Lake. I do not have a not in my backyard proposal or perspective. I am here to say, don't tear out the dam at Silver Lake. We have an urban retreat right here in Rochester. It kind of wants to say River City, but anyway. It's a wooded lake with peace. It's a wooded lake with playtime. It's a wooded lake in very rich in nature. You can see trout lilies. We saw them this morning, and you have to go to Whitewater State Park to see those. It is alive. It is peace. It is daily community. I walk 5 kilometers a day, 5 or 6 days a week with my walking partner. That can be twice around Silver Lake, or we have a couple different variations. We may laugh the whole way around. We may grieve the whole way around. We meet an entire community, clinic patients, Rochester residents, all ages. It's a playground, remember that, but the lake is there. Kids are excited about the water, about the eagles. All ages, all times, all cultures. In 90-degree weather, I see Somali women with their black hijab and everything walking, and we talk. We have nicknames for each other so we recognize the traits. It's a community. And it's one of the things that gives peace for all of us together. Without a lake, it's not the same environment. I drive to get there. It's not my backyard. But without a dam to keep water in it, or without a dam to regulate flooding if we ever get a really wet year again,
And Ms. Bucciaconi, it's time to wrap up.
then we won't have it. Please, don't tear out the dam.
Thank you. All right. No,
Where is he?
waving signs is fine. Aaron Richard. Please introduce yourself. You have 2 minutes.
Right here. Hi, my name is Aaron Richard. I live at 104 23rd Street Southwest, Rochester, Minnesota. As many of you know, I ran the boat and bike rentals at Silver Lake from 2006 to 2020. I have witnessed the ebbs and flows of the Zumbro on a daily basis for many years, and have seen firsthand 50, 100, and 500-year floods and major ice jams at Silver Lake over the past 20 years. I have emailed all of you multiple times about the flaws that I see in the proposal to change the dam in Silver Lake. Many of these are the same flaws that I saw in the 2018 open house at the fire station at Silver Lake. Since then, I've been asking real-world simulations of the proposals under major flood circumstances. I support a lake at Silver Lake that supports paddle boarding, paddle boating, canoeing, kayaking, and rowing, not swimming. These activities need a lake that has very tight parameters for water speed and depth, and the current dam structure does that. I support a safe path for bicycle and pedestrian safety. I believe a path could be put in right now for Lucille on the north side of Silver Lake Dam the way it sits. I've done the measurements and I can show you that it would be ADA compliant. I don't like the fish ladder proposal because the low volume of water that goes through the area will not sustain safe passage for fish. I do believe a fish elevator is the way to go, and it could be installed without removing any of the current dam structure. I've seen people use lies, fears, and money to persuade people on both sides of this project, and all those things are doing is creating bias. And bias creates flawed decision-making and confuses the cause. Anything short of sitting down with the Army Corps of Engineers and seeing real-world simulations before making a decision is a disservice to the people you represent.
Mr.
Thank you.
Richard. Thank you. Jim Kashmerzinski. Please introduce yourself. You have 2 minutes.
Greetings, City Council. Thank you. Today, I stand before you to advocate for the preservation of Silver Lake Dam in Rochester. Its iconic structure stands not only as a testament to our history, but also as a vital component of our community's well-being. Here are a few compelling reasons why I think this dam should not be removed. First and foremost, Silver Lake Dam serves as a critical flood control measure. In a region prone to unpredictable weather patterns, the dam plays a crucial role in mitigating flood risks, safeguarding both property and lives. Removing it could expose our community to heightened vulnerability during heavy rainfall events, leading to devastating consequences. Secondly, the Silver Lake Dam is an integral part of our local ecosystem. Its presence supports diverse aquatic life and provides habitats for numerous species. Removing the dam would disrupt the delicate balance, potentially leading to irreversible harm to the environment. Furthermore, the Silver Lake Dam holds significant historical and cultural value for our community. It stands as a symbol of our heritage, reminding us of the pioneers who built it and this generations who have benefited from its existence. Preserving it honors our past and enriches our sense of identity as residents of Rochester. Moreover, Silver Lake Dam contributes to the aesthetic beauty of our crypt cityscape. Its tranquil waters and picturesque surroundings enhance the quality of life for residents and attract visitors from near and far. Removing the dam would deprive us of this natural treasure and diminish the charm of our beloved city. In conclusion, the Silver Lake Dam is more than just a structure. It's a vital asset that serves multiple purposes, from flood control to environmental conservation, from historical preservation to enhancing our quality of life. Its removal would pose significant risks and deprive our community of invaluable benefits.
Thank you. Sir.
Therefore, I urge you to join me in advocating for
Thank
the
you.
preservation.
And I really
of the dam.
appreciate that
Thank you.
everyone is sticking within the 2 minutes. That really is respectful of our community. Thank you. David Morrill. You have 2 minutes.
Good evening. Council President and council members, I'm Dave Morrill, 140 14th Street Northeast, and I'm here to request the Silver Lake Dam be left in place and that we proceed with the well overdue sediment removal and maintenance for Silver Lake. In 1995, the city completed an 8-year flood control project along the Zumbro River. This included construction of a channel through Silver Lake to provide the needed capacity to safely carry floodwaters through the city. Also, one entire phase of the flood control project was remodeling and modifications to the dam. This included removal of a stationary 1937 concrete crest and installation of a 5-foot high, 147-foot long hinge leaf gate that is remotely lowered and raised to provide passage of floodwaters, adjust the lake level for upstream maintenance, and also provide for inspections and also can maintain a downstream discharge. The cost of this entire 8-year-long project was $96 million, with the federal government providing $70 million. As a condition of receiving those monies, the city agreed to operate and maintain the improvements. An operation and maintenance manual was prepared in 1996, and that spells out responsibilities of the city. One of these is cleaning sediment from the Zumbro River in several sections. The flood control channel that runs through this from the 7th Street Bridge to Silver Lake Dam was constructed as part of this project. It's not had any maintenance performed in the past 30 years. In 2015, a survey of the lake showed the channel had filled to a depth of 3 feet at a location just downstream from the 7th Street Bridge, and a total of 218,000 cubic yards of sediment is needed to be removed.
It's final.
The dam
thought.
proposal has continued to postpone that, and I encourage the city to proceed with the sediment removal and leave the dam in place.
Thank you, Mr. Morrill. All right, Diana Freeman.
Diana is my name, and I live over Northwest Rochester. I've lived here 66 years. And I rarely come to these council meetings because all you do is spend and tax all the time. Tonight, I am here in support of the Silver Lake Dam, the lake, the geese, and please take down the weeds at Silver Lake. I've talked to you about this before. I have to mow my yard. You should have to mow the parks. This historical landmark, Silver Lake, and the dam in Rochester have been here my entire life and longer. It's been down by my grandparents' homes, both of them. I grew up going to Silver Lake, feeding the geese. A lot of us did here in this room. We have very fond memories. Please save our history. Do not ruin it. Currently, you have boarded up my grandparents' home down by Silver Lake and you condemned it. I have no doubt that you're going to build affordable housing in that corner. And that means more votes for the Democrats and high prices where people cannot afford the rent. That is why you are doing all these ridiculous affordable housing, is for more votes for your side. These rental affordable housing units are not affordable. Some renters pay more than I pay for my home mortgage. I'm just sick about my grandparents' house being condemned. I grew up there. You have ruined downtown. There are more than 700 businesses now that are closed downtown. You've gotten my notes. Now, please cut down the weeds at Silver Lake. Millions of us, including myself, have asthma and allergies. It's an eyesore down there. And those weeds are so high, but I am told by the council in the past that you have those weeds there to stop the geese from getting out. Really? Guess what? Geese have wings. They fly, right? Geese fly. They fly. They have wings. So no matter how high those weeds go, they're still gonna fly out. So why are you leaving those weeds there?
Final thought.
I don't understand. As far as the dam at Silver Lake, you're proposing to spend millions of dollars wasting my tax dollars and all these other people in this room and all the people in the city. This does not have to be done at all. More waste and spending of our tax dollars for no good reason. You seem to enjoy spending my money. Maybe I can spend your money. Send it to me, I'll spend it.
Ms. Freeman, your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We're at 18 and a half minutes, everyone. Loringstead.
Hi, team. Good to see you. And Rochester, look at how passionate this group is. This is a big deal. Most cities would be just blessed to have this. Thank you, council, for having us. I'm here for Save the Lake. I live downtown Rochester, but for years and years lived at 235 9th Avenue Northeast. I've run around that lake many, many times. I was a former marathoner too. I'd leave my house, run 5 miles and come back. I passionately want to save the lake. I give tours many times to people coming to Rochester, monthly. We always not only include the Seneca spot, but also come around to the east side of the lake. There's a couple spots where you can sit and look out at a reflection. And that reflection is a reflection of the city. All of us got up in this morning. We might not all have common ground today, but we have common. We looked in the mirror this morning. What's the reflection? That reflection of all of us is a big thing. When we go around to that east side of the park, I've sat with people from many states, many countries, and they go, wow, look at Rochester. What a nice reflection. You get to see St. Mary's and the downtown in the background. It's pure joy. Keep our reflection. What we want the rest of the world to see, keep Silver Lake. Godspeed.
Thanks, Mr. Stead. All right. So we are at 20 minutes, so I'll let my colleague.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend our rules and extend open comment for 30 minutes.
Or for
Ari?
just point of clarification, for the remainder of the signed up speakers or?
No, I
for-
wanted to do it for 30 minutes.
Okay. There's 30 minutes is more time than we have speakers signed up for. Okay, we have a second. Sorry, Councilmember Keen, any discussion?
No, again, I think we are moving through this very well, so I think if we keep on this sort of pace, we'll be fine.
Okay, other discussion? All right, we need a super majority. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. All right, Pilar Holt.
Hello, my name is Pilar Holt and I live in the Homestead Trails neighborhood and with my husband, and I'm here today because I wanted to speak up about the community garden that is a part of our neighborhood. We recently moved into this neighborhood last November because we fell in love with the house and area. Since beginning our house search, we knew we wanted a place where connections can happen. As a local volunteer in the gardening world here in Rochester, I see value for our community gardens in as many spots as possible to make food and the growing experience equitable and attainable for all. When we saw the garden during our search, we were excited that there was a possibility of garden access that included neighbors as collaborators, while I learned what grows best in our new location, having recently moved to the area. My husband and I value the opportunity to be a part of the community here in Rochester, as well as what it offers us as first-time home buyers. To take away from the neighborhood would be to erase one of the reasons why we chose to settle in our current home. After meeting our fellow neighborhoods to plan our plots and crops, I'm sure that everyone else would feel the same way. This garden is truly what it means to have a sense of community and pride for where we live. Please consider allowing this garden to continue in the lot to help spread awareness and education for food access to it that is available to all, since we regularly share, donate, and rely on the food to be grown locally and ethically in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holt. Dennis Nelson. Dennis Nelson. All right, Steve Borkart. Please introduce yourself and you have 2 minutes.
Council President Carlson and members, thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight. I can't hardly introduce myself in 2 minutes, but I'll be quick. We've already spoken a lot about the dam. I'm here in support of the dam also, but I come at it from a flood prevention perspective as a result of my career in emergency management, storm watch, and flood prevention. This is a part of a whole. It's been debated in recent weeks whether or not Silver Lake is an important part of that whole. It is a component of the whole. The entire system was created as an integrated multi-jurisdictional flood control system. No one component can be modified without studying the impacts on the performance of the entire system. Section 408 US Code 33 specifies how the Corps of Engineers that designed this for us will require that this review be made. I'm here to ask you to bring a singular focus to this review, the same way your predecessors did in the early 80s that were responding to the loss of life in 1978. Number one priority was saving lives. Bike paths and recreation trails, very nice. Fish, further down the line. Number one obligation, saving lives. So as we tinker with this and modify it, I ask you to maintain that singular focus and honor your predecessors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borkhardt. All right, John Kriesel. Thank you all for being respectful. Appreciate it. That includes you, Mr. Kriesel. Come on up. You have 2 minutes.
John Kriesel, Madam President, members of the council and staff, thank you for this opportunity to address you. I encourage you to see that landmark status remains with this park, so that we proceed very carefully that the modification doesn't take the landmark status away. If that happens, we will accomplish taking away a recreational area. Aaron spoke a little bit earlier, very eloquently, as well as Dave and Greg. I have very little to add other than if we need fish ladders, that can happen. Steve brought up points of public safety that I think all of us care for. And we must primarily pay attention to the public safety. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kriesel. Jerry Perry. Hello, you have 2 minutes. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Jerry Perry. That's my real name. I live at 1201 East Silver Lake Drive, which is not on the lake, but it's on the corner of 14th Street. As you go around the lake, it's a little blue house. If you come up on 14th from Silver Lake and it's an icy night, you might come into my fence. So that's where I live. Enough has been said that I hope you take into consideration. I'm only here because we've lived there since 1980 on that corner, and we have seen people from all over the world walk by. And Councilman Palmer runs by and can see my wife who works out there maintaining the garden, and they talk to her about the beauty of the lake and so how happy they are to walk around this lake because they're attending the Mayo Clinic or someone's attending the Mayo Clinic. So you've had all the other reasons. One of the things I know you do is you rely on your staff to give you help. That's what they're there for. You can't all be experts, so you rely on them as your experts. Please take into consideration that you're public. You have bright, experienced people here who are giving you information that you can use. Please listen to them. They've lived there. They know what it's like there. They have the information. Please listen to them. They are your experts as much as your staff when you think about it.
Final thought. You're just out of time.
Is my time up?
Yes.
Well, thank you.
But thank you, Mr. Perry.
That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
All right, Mark Frederickson.
Excuse me. Good evening and a happy Earth Day this evening. President Carlson and council members. My name is Mark Frederickson. I live a couple blocks west of Silver Lake. I'm going to be speaking, I guess, in the minority here tonight in that I support the project. You've received my emails and letters over the last couple of years spelling out my reasoning behind that. So rather than reiterating those, I'm going to just take a personal note and try to be brief this evening as there's a lot of people that want to speak. So Kathy and I moved to Rochester, in 1989 and took an apartment half a block west of Silver Lake. We had a large dog, hence the beginning of our daily walks around Silver Lake. We now live east of Silver Lake, but we continue those walks. In fact, our only weather rule is we walk unless there's lightning. So it is many, many trips around the lake and bicycling. So our least two favorite portions of the walk when we moved to Silver Lake was the 7th Street Bridge and sidewalk and the Broadway Bridge and sidewalk. You may remember in 1999, the city put in the walk bridge down slope from the fire station. I remember at the time there was a lot of opposition to that. There were a lot of angry letters to the editor, people accusing the city of wasting taxpayers' money. And yet, if you look at that bridge today, you'll see how it's used and appreciated. I've heard that we can do a walking and biking bridge where the dam currently is, but that doesn't help us tie into a path that would go along the north side of the lake and get people off 14th Avenue. With that, I thank you again for your time this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Frederickson. Pat Sexton.
Good evening, Pat Sexton, Executive Director of the Rochester Area Builders. With roughly 400 members, we are the largest outstate builders association in Minnesota. As Mr. Miller ably noted earlier later tonight, you have an agenda item on housing. As all of you know, people and families create substantial wealth by owning their own home. The Maxfield study showed that we should have been creating about 1,000 homes a year, every year for the past 10 years. There are a host of reasons, but the important point is we have come up terribly short. I'm here because I'm really encouraged with the cooperative, open, and flexible nature of your city staff. Clearly, they are dedicated to trying to fix this problem by doing something different, and the builders applaud that flexibility. Appropriating a line from Mayo Clinic, if all of us can put the potential homeowner in the center of the room and do what is best for them, I think we'll all be successful. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Mr. Sexton. Adam Busby.
Good evening, Adam Busby. I'm speaking on behalf tonight of the ZIPS drivers representing ATU 10005 as a union rep. We have a situation where a passenger has tried to physically assault one of our ZIPS drivers with a cane, has hit the vehicle with the cane, and more recently on Thursday decided to move to verbally abusing and using racial slurs against one of our drivers. And some of what he said, he told him, he's a Hispanic driver, told him that the Mexicans were running Texas, along with some racial slurs. We followed the procedure laid out to us by city staff that we needed to follow to remove this person off the bus, and city staff came to us and said, it wasn't caught on video, so we're not going to follow through the procedure, even though we did the write-ups that they required. I don't care if it was caught on video. Our drivers should not be, we had a big deal this week where city officials were present and made a lot of noise about racism in this town. Now we have something to do with it. Let's put our feet where our mouth is. Our drivers should not be subject to this. We have a process. They followed it. This needs to be dealt with. It's unacceptable for a driver doing his job to be subject to racial slurs and racial harassment after the physical abuse that he's perpetrated. This needs to be dealt with. I'm not happy. I don't think it's a good thing, and I don't appreciate the city staff also said, well, he was just stating his opinion. It wasn't racism. That's what racism is. It's opinion. It's somebody's opinion. That's the totality of it. So we need to do this. We don't need to just say, hey, this doesn't reflect our city's culture. We need to do something when it's within our power to do so. Thank you very much. As always, a pleasure.
Mr. Busby. Tim Schmidt.
Good evening, council. My name is Tim Schmidt, 442 10th Street Northwest. I'm here to speak in support of saving Silver Lake Park and Silver Lake Dam. I've been a lifetime resident of Rochester. There's a picture of me from 1972 in the paper playing at the park. At the time of the 78 flood, I was living with my parents up on Elton Hills Drive. I remember walking down Elton Hills Drive and standing on the bridge and watching the trees thump underneath the bridge as the water goes through Northbrook Park Shopping Center. And then in 93, I bought a house, my current house at 442. It's right by Cascade Creek. I can tell you when the Cascade Creek gets up to 16 and a half feet, my backyard gets filled with water. So as far as the dam goes, I am concerned that there's not a lot of concern with the flood control. It's, Borkart's mentioned it before. I didn't see a lot of it from the 72 or the 2022 council packet. And I want to make sure that this is all well thought out. If the city is told by the experts that to keep the dam, are we going to do it? Is this something we're going to work around? It is helpful to have a multi-use path going around the lake. It goes right past my house as Cascade Creek. I've seen the Med City Marathon go through. So I do believe that the multi-use paths are a good amenity, but I also believe that the dam can also coexist with them and is something that should be saved for the security of Lower Town. And as a side too, not only is there concern that Lower Town goes underwater, but this, before the flood control work was done, we were in a 100-year flood zone, which carries extra zoning requirements, building code requirements, insurance requirements. And all of that was very expensive, especially for a working class neighborhood. So I'd like to urge the council to save the dam and be responsible with the park. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. That is it for the list that I have. Is there anyone who would like to speak who didn't have a chance to sign up? We do have a few more minutes.
Just like to remind everybody.
Come on up.
Minnesota is
Wait to speak until you're at the microphone so those watching virtually have a chance to hear you. And your name, sir.
My name is Gil Strand. I'm a resident since 1965. Originally from Wisconsin, but I came to Minnesota and the land of 10,000 lakes. And we have a claim to one man-made here 80 years. If we can participate, maintain, and enjoy, appreciate all the aesthetics that it gives us, recreation, beauty, reflections, memories. Our government spent a ton of money to protect us from another 100-year flood. And let's keep the dam. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Strand. Anyone else wanting to speak? All right, we will close public comment and officially call the meeting to order, but thank you all for your comments and for being very kind and gracious to one another and your passionate speeches. Ms. Kasel, Clerk Kasel, please call the roll.
Councilmember Keen,
Here.
Councilmember Bransford,
Here.
Councilmember Wall,
Here.
Councilmember Kirkpatrick,
Here.
Councilmember Palmer,
Here.
Councilmember Dennis,
Here.
Council President Carlson,
Here.
Mayor Norton.
Is absent. All right, well, I will turn it over to our city administrator, Ms. Allison Zelms, to share her report.
Thank you, Council President, council members, members of the public. I always start the report off by thanking our teammates for acting with the spirit of customer service that they do with respect, integrity, safety, and excellence, whether they work in an office or out in the field, whether they're our partners through contractual relationships or otherwise. We always thank them for that. Also, we have some exciting news today. So I want to recognize a big congratulations to Corey Bjornberg. Corey is one of our teammates out at the wastewater transit facility. So he's a wastewater transit facility operator. And he is the one person this year and this has been one operator per year since 1958 in the Central States Water Environment Association to receive the William D. Hatfield Award. So it's for innovation and all of the different work that goes into making sure our processes go well. And as noted by his teammates, he is being the one recognized, but he would be the first person to tell you that the award goes to everyone at our water reclamation plant because of the teamwork that they need to have in order to achieve that. But this is no small feat. This is for all wastewater treatment facility operators across Wisconsin, Illinois, and Minnesota. So great work happening there, significant cost savings with energy savings and new processes. So congratulations to Corey. Also, I want to let folks know that on this Wednesday from 5:30 to 7:30, there will be an open house about 22nd Avenue Northwest and traffic management improvements. That's going to be at the Development Services and Infrastructure Center at 4001 West River Parkway Northwest on the other side of the North Police Station. So coming out for that. We also just want to point out that we're hitting some milestones at Soldiers Field Park for the upgrades there that are not just the pool, but there's a significant amount of work that's happened at the updated pool. It's going to be about twice the size. If you've driven past, the slides are bigger than what they look like in 2D when they're actually in the ground. So it's very exciting, continuing to do work. The West Playground is still open. Some changes in traffic though, so just be aware if you're over at Soldiers Field, just to be cautious of that continuing construction as we push forward to try to get the pool open timely. Also have an online survey to talk about 6th Street Bridge, roadway safety and riverfront improvements. So we talk about the bridge project, but you can see that little red area is a small amount of the improvements that will continue down 6th Street. So that survey is available, polco.us/SK4KMZ, or you can head to our website and find it there, rochestermn.gov. So talking about your thoughts about traffic calming, riverfront activities, parking needs, et cetera. And then finally, you had a study session about this to provide some feedback, and the request for proposals for the library master plan is out on the streets. So they should have consulting firms looking at that, looking at sort of a long range idea about the aging facilities, future needs, how and where, and what types of services the library should consider now and into the future. So that's all I have for today, and excited to be here.
All right, thank you, Ms. Zelms. The mayor is away, so we will move on to approving the order of the agenda. I don't believe there have been any changes. Go ahead with the motion.
I would move approval of the order of the agenda.
Second.
All right, Councilmember Keen.
Nothing to add.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion carries. And just noting that it's 5-1 with one away. Okay. And moving on to the consent agenda, we have Councilmember Dennis pulling F12. Did she decide on anything else?
I haven't heard of any other things to pull. I know that there was outreach happening to get questions answered.
Councilmember Dennis, did you decide to pull anything besides F12?
I know I pulled that earlier.
Okay, was there anything else? Otherwise, I'd invite a motion to approve in block F1 through 11, F13 through 16.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Keen, you have the floor.
Nothing to add.
Any other discussion? There's lots of great things in this agenda.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Okay.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries. Moving on to our public hearings, we have 2 city-driven public hearings. So the process is for these particular hearings that staff will provide an introduction. We'll have our public hearing, and I do have a few people signed up for G1 in particular. People who are wishing to speak on an item have up to 5 minutes each, of course, with the encouragement of keeping your comments brief. Close the public hearing. We have a chance for staff to ask questions, and then we'll invite a motion, discussion, and vote. So our first item is G1, the reconstruction of 7th Avenue Northwest from 7th Street Northwest to 10th Street Northwest, project number J7837. And we have Mr. Dombrowski here to introduce the item. Go ahead.
Good evening, Council President, members of the council. Tonight, we are here holding the assessment hearing for the 7th Avenue Northwest reconstruction project from 7th Street to 10th Street. As you recall, this is the third in a series of meetings. We initially adopted the feasibility report. The next step was to hold a public hearing, at which point you ordered the project improvements to be made, plans prepared, and an assessment roll to be prepared and presented tonight at the assessment hearing. So the action we would request tonight is that the council adopts the resolution which levies the proposed assessments for this project. I will share, and I've shared this before because we do get the question, the assessments shown tonight are the maximum that they could be. However, if the costs come in lesser than what was estimated, we do send out reduced final notices when the assessments are adopted. Project is scheduled for construction in the 2024 construction season. And with that, I would pause while you open the public hearing, and we'll be here for questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dombrowski. I will open the public hearing and call John Kriesel up to speak. Introduce yourself and you have 5 minutes.
Yes, Madam President. Thank you, members of the council. I own a residence on that 7th Avenue, 811 7th Avenue. And I can say that staff has been very helpful in providing the needed information as it relates to the traffic that's going to be able to be monitored and utilized on that particular narrowing of the street. I think some of the questions that I might raise is that the trees that are going to be removed, and I'm sorry I haven't reached out to you earlier, are trees going to be part of an assessment? Are they going to be returned to the boulevards to enhance particular boulevards? And I believe one of the bullet points of discussion was that edge of the bridge with the traffic that turns, especially buses going north on 7th Avenue. There are many blind spots, so the people that live on 7th Avenue are very concerned about trying to get out in the fast-paced traffic that is directly to the south. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Kriesel. Luke Doskey. Please introduce yourself. You have 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Luke Doskey. I live on 1207 10th Avenue Northwest in the Washington neighborhood. I'd like to thank President Carlson and the council for your letting me speak today. So I use that strip of road quite frequently. I drive my car, I walk, I use my bike, and those more inner core neighborhoods are now becoming heavily used to go from, I think it's 7th Street to 10th Avenue or 10th Street or 10th Street and then 14th Avenue or 14th Street. And the narrowing of the lanes, I think it's very important for safety for all users. We have several equal opportunity housing there, and there are many elderly people in our neighborhood that need to navigate this area safely. And I think that if this one clarifying question, would this be similar to 7th Avenue in the Kutsky Park neighborhood? And then because I've also used that, and that's a beautiful way of increasing these boulevards, and it's very easy to bike down there to get to work. But thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Doskey. All right. Shine Lacanilado. I'm so sorry. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, good evening, council members. My name is Shine Lacanilao. I live in 7th Street. I'm a first-time homeowner. And I'm here today just to understand why a few of us need to pay for the reconstruction of the street. I'd like to understand that as a taxpayer, it's a bit too much for us, a handful of homeowners, to pay for the reconstruction of the street. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? Please come on up. Introduce yourself and you have 5 minutes.
Hello, my name is Monica Rose, and I do not currently live on 7th Avenue. My father does, 907 7th Avenue Northwest. He's 88 years old. He cannot be here tonight, so I'm speaking on his behalf. He thinks this is way too much. Why we should have to, as homeowners on 7th Avenue, pay for a public service. It's public sewer, it's public water main lines, has nothing to do with property owners. These things are on public land, under public land. We've always been told that from the main lines to the houses is our responsibility. If anything breaks there, it's our responsibility. That's what we have to fix. Other than that, once it gets to the public water main, and the sewer line, it's the city's responsibility. Why has that changed? I don't understand. I understand that a couple of years ago, or maybe it was last year, you guys changed it so that people who have been assessed since 2023 are now going to have to pay for it. In the past, the city has covered it. Like 11th Avenue Northeast, homeowners did not have to pay for a thing. It was all city covered. And that should be the same. It's ridiculous. I mean, my dad has paid $9,000. It's ridiculous why he should have to do that. He's lived there for 65 years. He's not going to be there much longer. He's on his last legs. Why he should have to face this at this point in his life is ridiculous. It's not an improvement project. It's a maintenance project. It's maintaining the city sewer lines, maintaining the city water main lines. It's not an improvement project. It's maintenance. The only thing that could be called improvement is narrowing of the street, which is something else that I am against, because I was just there tonight before I came here. Another car, there's cars parked on both sides of the street. The car is coming toward me. I'm going the opposite direction, of course. And we both had to stop and pause, wait for the other person to get past before we could continue. I don't know how that's going to happen if you have 4 feet less. Buses aren't going to fit through there. Cars have to wait and pause, wait for people to go by. And there's all these Mayo Clinic employees parking on there. If you're going to do this, you're going to have to put some kind of resident parking only signs up. I mean, it's getting to be, I don't know, it's just very frustrating. Anyway, it's not a improvement project. It's a maintenance project. It should be paid for by the city. RPU, they're the ones driving this. They should be paying for it, not the homeowners. The homeowners on that street aren't the ones going to benefit from us. Benefit. I mean, what kind of benefit are they going to get? They're never going to see anything out of this. What they have now won't be any different from what they have next. It's going to be, the water's going to go through, sewer's going to throw through. Nothing's going to change for them. It's for the city's benefit, not for their benefit.
We'll have staff clarify some of those questions. All right, anyone else? So we'll close the public hearing, and I know that there are several comments mentioned. I'm wondering, Mr. Dombrowski, do you want to just start responding to the comments? Okay.
Yes, thank you. First off, we did receive one appeal from the property owner at 907 7th Avenue Northwest, and the clerk's office has collected that. So we did receive that as part of the state statutes. Property owners do have the right to file an appeal. They need to make sure they do it this evening in writing or prior to. We also have a deferral process, and it's based on different, there's a few different reasons that one could choose to apply for deferral, and we did receive one of those as well. It's related to age, disability, military status. So that's on the city's webpage, and I can get more information to anyone who may want to see if they're eligible for the deferral process.
That sounds like it might be relevant to the last
Yep,
speaker.
and what happens is it defers the assessment and it passes it on to future property buyers and or, if it were a case of someone passing away, that it would go on to their heirs that would take on the assessment at that point. It does accrue interest over time. That is the one thing to be aware of with the deferral process. So if it stays on there for 20 years, it can grow in interest a fair amount. So that's something people should always consider. As far as how the assessments are calculated, nobody is paying an assessment for any of the utility work. No one's paying for anything other than the roadway. So we take the roadway costs only, not the water main, not the storm sewer, not the sanitary sewer. That's all paid by the utility funds. We take the total cost of the roadway, so the pavement, the rock, the curb and gutter, driveways, the grading to prep that. And the city pays for 75% of that cost. And the other 25% is then shared by the different properties along the project based on property valuations. So that's how the calculation works for the assessments. Someone asked if it would look similar to 7th Avenue in the Kutzke Park neighborhood. It will look very similar. It's our new typical section for this type of roadway it is narrower than what that street is today. So, but you still have 2 lanes of travel that meet all of our lane widths. So vehicles will be able to pass. If there's cars parked, that's natural traffic calming. We will remain with parking on each side of the roadway. So parked cars can help with traffic calming and slow speeds. We do have a speed study that I don't have the data back from the traffic team yet, but we did go out and collect pre-project data. Once the project's done, we will go out and collect speed data afterwards. We're doing that on all of our projects as we are reconstructing roadways around the city. The intersections on the project, we are gonna provide bump outs so as you know, you can't park at the intersection, so the curb will meander and taper in. We call it a bump out. It shortens the crossing for anyone who's wanting to cross the roadway at those intersections. We will be doing that at 7th Street and 10th Street. That's also helpful with traffic calming as well. It doesn't necessarily resolve the cross section of 7th Street where we've heard about some visibility issues. Those are the types of things that, as we hear about them, we add them to a list of intersections, corridors, and work with the traffic team to do sort of minor studies around what the issue is, and can bring recommendations back separately with that sort of scenario. And trees, I did look at the plans. There are 5 trees planned for removal. We would work with the Parks Department on a planting plan after the project. Unfortunately, some of the trees are over sewer and or water services, and there's no way to avoid them. If we, as we start the project, we always look at maybe there is ways to save trees. That's always where we start, and work with the Parks Department on we have a tree protection detail for the trees that aren't meant to be removed as part of the project. So all stuff that our team will look at as the project's underway and we have construction going. I think I hit on all of the comments.
The residential parking, can you just explain, since we have members in the audience who are interested in parking, what that would look like?
Sure. If people are interested in doing the residential permit parking program, which we have in our community, and it is an option, I can get them the information on that. It requires a number of signatures to petition, and then we'd look at what that parking zone would consist of.
Okay, so just to be clear, if you're wanting to appeal formally, that's something that has to be done tonight. There's a potential deferral process, and Mr. Dombrowski can get more information about that and the residential parking program if there's interest. Other questions from my colleagues for staff? Councilmember Kirkpatrick?
Thank you. Mr. Dombrowski, can you help me to understand why there's no tree replacement at the beginning? Maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but I know developers have to provide a tree replacement plan or tree implementation planting when new developments come through, but is the city exempt from doing that?
No,
Or-
we typically replace trees along all of our projects. If it's not with the project, we follow it up and work with the Parks Department. So for instance, 65th Street Northwest, we didn't include that in the bidding documents. We're actually working separately to put a planting plan together following the project. So we've done it both ways. I can talk with the team. We could also just include it in the bids, but Many times it works well to evaluate species and go out there with the forester and do a separate project with the Parks Department. But I will talk with the team.
Got it. Okay, thank you so much. And then the other question I had was, oh boy.
Should see her writing.
Yeah. Is there a mechanism for removing or reducing interest on deferment?
That would have to be something that the council would have to do as a separate action. The typical process is we have the interest rate that it changes every year, and our finance department establishes that. And that's what gets applied to the assessments when they are adopted based on whatever that number was for that calendar year. The council has flexibility in adjusting the payback periods. I don't recall that we've ever had changes to the interest rate. I don't think our finance department would recommend that. However, there is flexibility in looking at the period of payback. It's typically 10. I have seen projects where it's been extended to 15 years.
And since we're the body that would pursue something like this, when or if we wanted to do that, when would we go about doing something like that?
We could
Or how is it done?
We don't adopt the assessments until the project's complete and we certify them to the county for the tax statement. If there was a desire, I think it would be good to have the discussion this evening though.
Well, how, I guess, yeah, I get, that's why I brought it up. Thank you. How often does something like this happen with a larger price tag attached to an elderly gentleman's property? I mean, we have varying populations, age populations that own properties. How frequently does this happen with someone as aged as this?
I would have to check with the team. It sounds like we have a dozen or so currently on record. Some of them have dropped off the list over the years.
It's not very many. The council does approve them though, so it comes to the city council for approval. So there's a time frame and a process for that.
For the deferral?
So if you wanted to change the interest rate on something like that, you would need to, I would suggest you probably need to do that for everyone, A. And, well, everyone going forward. There are any number of people who have been collecting interest on their current deferrals, but the last time we looked at this, I think was about 2 years ago when someone came forward, and I want to say there were, and some of these have been in place for a very long time, maybe 20 total across the entire city. There's not very many.
Okay, I want to move to,
We're still doing questions.
yeah.
Can we just hold
Yeah,
it off? on
yeah,
that?
I need some further direction, please, because I would like to either pursue this, discuss it more, or invite staff, direct staff to bring this back at the time that we should probably do that, because I'm assuming appeals haven't been made yet, that kind of a thing.
And the deferral process, again, I think we want to keep that separate from, the action requested tonight related to this assessments to properties that, aren't eligible for deferral.
Right, right.
Maybe we could have a brief discussion in other business and
Yeah.
just see.
Yeah, just if staff could help guide that when we get to other business, that to help us be more informed, I would appreciate that.
I guess I don't have a ton of background on it, so I would want to do a little bit of research, understanding, is there anything in the statute at the
Right.
state level that, we're going against?
Right.
I think,
That would be my concern
meant
with
more-
trying to, I wouldn't be able to speak intelligently to
yeah,
that
I meant
topic
more,
tonight.
could we discuss whether that's
Okay,
something we want to come back?
yes,
Okay,
thank you.
all right,
I appreciate
Councilmember
it.
Palmer?
A couple of questions are, so my understanding is that we can only assess for the value that the property is increased in value. Is that correct?
Yeah, the benefit received by the property.
So if somebody doesn't think that this is gonna benefit their property, then tonight they have to give to the city clerk, I don't like this assessment, and then we'd have to work that around that. Is that correct?
They would then, in addition to doing that, have to file in district court.
Okay. But not tomorrow. They have a little bit of time to do that.
They do have time.
Okay. So if they don't think that the value is going to be increased, they can do that tonight, and then we can work on that. Okay. So this is kind of an unusual project for me because about a fourth of it looks like it's city property on the east side. I know that we go with value. How did we determine the value of that city property?
It's based on the county valuation.
I'll ask a quick question. What did they value that little strip of land as?
I'm not certain without looking into it in more detail.
Okay. It just seems that the value here is not being fairly assessed because you have other properties. This is about a fourth of it. So the curb and gutter and street improvement is gonna go to the city, but we own it can't be worth very much money. So there's only one way of doing this, and that is off value of the property assessment. Is that correct?
That's the policy that the council adopted.
Okay. And when we adopted that about 2 years ago?
Yeah, within the last 2 years.
Okay. And so one of the questions was that 11th Avenue Northeast was not assessed. We've always assessed for property in the city of Rochester on the roads. Isn't that correct?
It's dependent on the type of project. If it's been preservation, not typically, maybe prior to when I worked here, there were projects, in the last decades ago, but it's really for full reconstruct projects.
Okay, so just terminology. Bulk reconstruct means we take everything out, just the road, and then we're gonna rebuild it. The other one is what did you call it?
Preservation, so like a mill and overlay, chip seal.
And in the city of Rochester, we do not assess for those.
We do not.
There are cities in
currently.
the state that do,
Correct.
but we do not.
It's not, currently in the policy, it reads that the preservation work comes out of the tax levy.
Okay, so we talked about the trees, they're gonna get replaced. The other question I have is, I'm glad you did a traffic study prior. The 7th Avenue Southwest, can you give us the numbers in a week or two on the results from the pre and the post, what happened there on traffic?
That one, we might not have pre-data because we didn't start that practice until the last 3 or 4 years.
Okay, so in the ones that we have had that practice at, can you give us an example, not tonight, but at sometime in the
I
future?
could give you an example tonight.
Oh,
So we had 2
fantastic.
neighborhood traffic management projects last year.
Okay.
It didn't snow this winter, it seemed like, so we took the opportunity to go out and see how the pilot projects are working. On each of those corridors, speeds dropped on average 3 miles per hour.
And do you know what the average speed was?
I would have to, we
Would you
can
get-
get that information and send it out to the.
Would you guess it's like 25 miles an hour or 45 miles an hour?
Higher, it's in the 30s.
In the 30s? Okay. Well, that's good that we saved all that money on snow plowing. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Keen.
Thanks. Thank you. Just on the specific stretch of road, I'm assuming it has not gone through a major rebuild in the last 50 years, or do you have any history on that?
No, it's 50s or 60s vintage. I'd have to look
Okay,
up.
so it's over 50 years and probably closer to 70 or 80?
Correct. The utilities are in the 80-year-old range.
Yeah, so the reason I'm asking, I was surprised at your response to Ms. Rose that you didn't talk about like the dig once policy and the idea that when somebody like RPU or Stormwater is going through with a project, we don't just do their project, we try to take those opportunities because we consider when roads get to be 50 or 60 or 70 years old, we need to do something before they start degrading.
Correct. So we partner with our teammates at RPU and work with, our team that is managing the storm sewer and sanitary sewer. We try to prioritize based on, it can be utility age and or condition where we've had issues. So for example, that other project we just most recently had the assessment hearing for, there'd been 10 water main breaks over the last number of years. So again, we don't want to come in, fix one thing, and 5 years later, we're tearing up people's streets again. So when this project's complete, the utilities will be completed, should last 75 to 100 years. The roadway, we try to get 50 years or more out of all of our streets with the different preservation work that will occur in the future. So it's really get in here, do it once, and then you don't have to worry about the impact from construction for a long time.
Thank you. I just appreciated more of a full discussion on this because this is something that we could do different each time. But I think the consistency of making sure we're using the same assessment process on North Broadway and a business street than we are on a residential street, because we don't want to be doing it different for every street. I think that's where we'll run into trouble. We can, this group could up here and says like, yeah, let's quit doing this. Let's quit assessing and we'll put it on the tax rolls. We can do those things, but we have to be, I think right now we're in a place that we agreed made sense. We changed how the assessments are made up. We just went through this on 4th Avenue Southwest. And I think part of the problem, I think in my mind, is that
Do you have a question? Because we don't have
Okay.
a motion yet.
I guess I just wanted to see if that was the reason when you say like the assessment thing. That's why there's an assessment, because the idea is it is a major rebuild. It's not just a maintenance.
Correct. Our policy is for reconstruction when we're reconstructing everything with the pavement, with the street. That's how it's been written. We have other funding that helps go towards preservation work in the community that comes from the tax levy. And so special assessments are one way to fund projects per state statute, and most every city in the state does use special assessments as one funding source amongst others that help deliver projects.
Yeah, last question. Then we just did on the consent agenda, approve, or we went out for, we have the bids and of the bids for 4th Avenue Southwest. Is the assessment process the same for this project as it was for that project?
It is.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Dennis?
Yeah. Hey, thank you. I've been listening to my colleagues discuss this and I, see that this seems very subjective. If you have, certain things that we do put on the tax levy, if it's, preservation, chip sealing, and then to categorize it as the resident came about, what is this? Is this maintenance? Is this, are we, is this improvement? I feel like it's I don't know, like the consistency, like Councilmember Keen mentioned, we really need consistency. And if we can't have consistency, I don't think we should have.
Do you have a question?
I do.
Councilmember Dennis?
Yeah, I do. This as something that we assess for, and I think it should be universally spread out among all residents, and not because my question, okay, because the system is complex. Today's the last day to do a deadline for deferrals. I know the court system is definitely not in the favor of people who are not, very knowledgeable about it. If you have barriers with language or economics, or a lot of different barriers cause the court system. And so when you go through and say, hey, you have to appeal, what if someone just doesn't want this done? Can they opt out and just say, you know what? I didn't know all of this. I bought this house. I'm struggling. I want home ownership. I feel, we want to make it so that people can have this experience of accumulating wealth and become, a homeowner. And if they get blindsided with a repair like this, can they just say, nope, I'm not going to do it? Can they somehow just say, and if they do say that, what happens if they refuse to pay these fees?
Well, ultimately, it will go on the tax roll, and if someone doesn't pay their taxes, they run the risk of their property going into foreclosures. So they do have like I mentioned, though, someone could contest the assessment by filing in writing tonight that they object to it, but then they also need to then follow through with filing in court, at which point that's when it goes to the judicial system and we work through it and we present our case and they present their case.
Okay.
So they do have that option per statute.
So something happens, family emergency, they can't file tonight for a deferral. Is there leniency of, I guess, I think this process is not not equitable, and I would.
Can you keep the discussion to after the motion?
Okay.
The deferral can be applied for later. It's the assessment process and whether someone wants to object or not, that needs to happen tonight.
Okay, and there's no leniency if it doesn't.
There is not per the state statute.
But this is the third time it's been on our agenda, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, there's a lot of barriers.
Councilmember Palmer?
Our assessments basically are set up by the state law, what we have to do for for informing and all the other items. Isn't that correct?
Yes, and the mailing of the notices and how soon we have to publish the public hearing that we had tonight. I would just also note, no, I lost my train of thought.
That
so
we
I
do
don't-
have a policy we've agreed on that's consistently
Thank you,
applied.
yeah.
Yep.
We were seeing a few more challenges and objections in the past with the former policy, so we really reduced the amount that we're proposing for collection from the private property owners with the new policy. And this is our third assessment hearing this year. We had one in 2023. We have not been taken to court since we've changed the policy.
And so the next question is kind of from my previous question, and that is the city is paying for this. And we don't typically pay taxes. And the county doesn't, and I'm assuming the churches don't. Everybody who has property pays this assessment. Is that correct?
Correct.
And not everybody pays property taxes, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Just like sidewalk assessments, others pay.
I would offer one other, just for years, as we think about how do we fund roadway reconstruction, thankfully the voters passed the sales tax extension. That will bring another, as we talked, 3.1 million on average a year, over the $50 million total for that, street reconstruction project. But recall the gap going into it was 16 to 20 million dollars annually. So this is just one mechanism we have. We've argued at the legislature for over a decade for street improvement districts, which would be similar to sidewalk improvement district, but it's never passed. That would have potentially been a different way to approach projects, but this is a tool we have and one that we use.
All right, is there a motion? Councilmember Keen?
I want to move to adopt a resolution levying the proposed assessments related to reconstruction of 7th Avenue Northwest from 7th Street Northwest to 10th Street Northwest.
Second.
All right, Councilmember Keen?
Yeah, again, I went through back in March, we went through a painful assessment hearing again on a very similar residential street with it's built, and in this case, it's built in the city, but built 50 to 70 years or 80 years ago. I'm watching mainly for consistency, and I think we made major improvements in 2020 to how we did assessments that have made it work better. My theory is one of the problems we're having right now is as these home values have gone up so much, the assessments, even though they're under that 3% threshold that we kind of test with, they become much bigger numbers. When I see some of these homes that have a $9,000, $8,000, and $7,000 assessments, it's a little jarring. At the same time, until we work through a major policy change, I want to stick with the policy we have and make sure we're applying it consistently.
Councilmember Bransford?
Speaking of consistency, I would also like to see consistency, and I absolutely don't disagree with you. And it's really a shame that the legislators don't understand how, I mean, the speaker tonight, it's true. This is a community city. I mean, everybody uses those streets, right? Everybody's water flows through those pipes. It is what it is. But I really do hope that we continue to push for a street reconstruction district, because then we really would have consistency with our sidewalk district policy. So, I mean, we can't get that tonight, but I hope we still keep going for that, because those are some big sticker shock numbers. I wouldn't be happy with that either. So just my 2 cents on, hopefully we'll keep trying on that. And I hope legislators watch Rochester City Council meetings and try to articulate why this doesn't make sense to do going forward.
I think I said this at the last hearing about this, but I was on the League of Minnesota Cities group that was reviewing legislative priorities like this, and it's been on their list for a long time, but there's been so little support that it wasn't even put forth as one of the priorities.
Why? I mean, that needs to be articulated very, very carefully. Why not? And just because it doesn't work.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Nay. Motion carries 6-1 with Councilmember Dennis voting nay. All right, we will
Take a break.
Just, let's do a quick break, maybe just after 7:30.
7:30?
Yeah.
Perfect.
You're absolutely right.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Thank you. We are moving on to item G2, which is also a public hearing, and this is public comments concerning finalists for appointment to the Ethical Practices Board, and I will turn it over to Mr. Spindler-Craig to introduce.
Thank you, Madam President, council members. Item G2 is in fact, yes, a public hearing to take public comments concerning finalists for appointment to the Ethical Practices Board. A relatively straightforward process as set out through the request for council action, but a reminder on a couple of things. The city council is not the appointing authority for these members to the Ethical Practices Board. The appointing authority is set out by the ordinance, which the city council set, but set out by ordinance. The appointing authority is made up of 3 individuals: the RCTC president, UMR chancellor, and the current president of the Olmsted County Bar Association. The ordinance also sets out this public hearing process. It's really an opportunity for the city council as well as members of the public to share your comments, perspectives on any of the individuals who have kindly put their name forward. Before we get to that point, I would be remiss if I didn't thank the 2 members who are leaving after serving 2 full terms on the Ethical Practices Board. That's Dr. Peter Amadio and Lynn Gentling. I'm very appreciative of their years of service for that important role. In the RCA, you do have the names of the folks who have volunteered to serve the community in this capacity. Again, a recording of this hearing and your comments will be forwarded to the appointing authority for their consideration.
Thank you. With that, I'll open the public hearing and invite anyone to speak. Mr. Skolnick, come on up. Please introduce yourself and you have 5 minutes. Council President, thank you.
Hi, yes. Yes, you are.
Just kidding.
Anyway, hi, nice. Hello, everybody. I'm actually quite concerned about this process because I know at one point, even when the council used to review committees that the mayor appoints to, we used to get resumes, and then Nick, unfortunately, I think it was Nick, had an idea that you were bombarded with paperwork and took away from the public seeing the actual resumes that were attached to the agenda. I always thought that was a bad move because I think it would be better if the public sees like more about these people rather than just have the mayor do it and with no information. Now, I understand these are not from the mayor. The problem I have, this is a public hearing, but it's a public hearing where, from what I understand, the council people get the resumes. The public gets no resumes, no information about these people, no background data. How can we possibly have a valid hearing without actual resumes and some kind of information? I can't believe that if there is a law that prohibits us getting the resumes, that law should be changed, in my opinion. The idea that you're doing a public hearing, but without the ability to actually comment on it because we have no information to base our comments on, to me, that's the ultimate of what community involvement is not. So I do think you should change this, and I actually think the whole thing should be tabled. I doubt if you'll do that, but I really think you should, because again, the public has no ability to comment on this. As all of you know, I've been involved with the council for many years. I don't know any of the people who are recommended at all. And so what's interesting is how could anyone really properly comment on these people without the data to comment on? So I really have a problem with this. To me, it's foolhardy and there's no reason to even do it. It accomplishes nothing. So why not share the information they give to the council with the public, and then maybe you'll get some comments from some people. But this is worthless. So I'd like to know why the public cannot get copies. Like, where does it say in the law that the public can't get copies of the resumes the same way the council does, especially if we're supposed to comment on it? Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Skolnick. Would anyone else like to speak on this item? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. And Mr. Spindler-Craig, would you just talk us through the process of whether there's confidential information or why we it's done as it is?
Yes, briefly. This has come up previously and it's a bit of a dilemma for the council. Yes, some of the materials submitted by the applicants is private data. If we were to consider a different process, there would be, need to be some level of redaction. That would be a process that would likely involve the city clerk's office, perhaps my office as well. But some level of redaction would need to be part of that process. We could talk that through if the council as a body thinks we need to review the process.
Any other questions for staff or a motion? Sure, Councilmember Dennis?
Yeah, so I'm just really quick Googling it. I know it goes through the city. Is there other alternative ways of accessing the Ethical Practices Board? Because if there is an issue with, let's say, a situation with the city, I know it goes through, or I'm kind of in the middle of Googling it here, but I wanted to get the exact wording. It goes through the city attorney's office, is that correct? Or who is the staff who supervises or is liaison for the Ethical Practices Board?
Councilmember Dennis, council members, I just want to make sure that I understand what you're asking. So you're not asking about the appointing process or the people who are in front of you tonight for consideration. You're talking
Process, yeah.
generally about the Ethical Practices Board and how it works.
Yeah, a little bit, I think. I think when
Keep the comments to the appointing of the ethical practice board members for this particular agenda item.
Well, I think it plays into factors too, when you look at potential conflict of interest and who is working with who and agendas or whatnot. So I just was curious on the process if someone had an ethical issue with a city staff member or a council member or some elected official, what city department would be in charge or the contact for the ethical practice board?
Asking about for people who are being appointed to the board, because that's what this agenda item is about.
It is, but like I definitely feel that to have like a broader sense, so people watching know that there is an ethical practices board and what we're talking about, and that it goes beyond just who's being appointed, but the whole system and how it fits together, who's who. There's a lot of connections with people. So I wanted to just see about
question.
Yeah, I'm just asking about the process
Sure.
for people and what city department is in charge or connected to the Ethical Practices Board.
Sure. I won't be able to address all of those questions or the whole system of the Ethical Practices Board, but I think part of your narrow question is that, yes, my office, the city attorney's office, staffs the Ethical Practices Board. That's part of the ordinance process. So my executive assistant, for example, is the person who monitors the website that has the complaint form process. And she's the primary liaison with the Ethical Practices Board president and the members of the board.
All right, Councilmember Keen.
Yeah, again, I appreciate the comment here that, we could do this different. Unfortunately, that applies to most everything we do up here. We could do it differently. But I want to understand that, like, Council President Carlson asked for motion, but there's no motion on this. We're just holding a public hearing. And as I understood in my prep work, there's a section here that says the public, the mayor, or the council may comment on any of the finalists. These comments will then be shared with the appointing committee. I mean, the purpose here really is to give them input, not so much for us to give them input from the mayor, from the public, or from this council. And sharing the names with the public as the finalists. I think this is a good direction we're going here. But can you respond to do we have this group's going to meet on the 24th, I believe, in a Zoom meeting and go through and do their process. That's a private meeting, I believe?
Correct.
Okay. And then the finalists will be announced, I think it's before the end of the month, so that their term starts May 1st?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So in this case, I mean, again, I don't have as a council member, I don't have a specific thing that I want kind of lift up one or put shade to another. I think this is a good process. I'm going to let it go through the way the ordinance called it out, and let's see how that works out. Thank you.
I guess the only, pointing out there's not a motion required. I guess the only comment I would have just on the heels of that and what's most helpful to the group reviewing. So if the chancellor and RCTC president, and the reviewer group would appreciate if the public had more information to respond to, then maybe that's something we would consider. But I would really ask them what would be most helpful for them to make good decisions.
Certainly, and I appreciate that suggestion, and we'll raise that question with them.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? All right, we will move on to H1, which is the home ownership creation program and the allocation of one-time 2023 affordable housing aid funding. And pleased to welcome Ms. Taryn Enans. And we'll let her get set up and go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. All right, just testing this out. Good evening, members of the council, council president, Taryn Edens, manager of housing and neighborhood services within the community development department. So I'm here to discuss two things tonight and ask for action on two items that are related. One is the homeownership creation program, and the other is our local affordable housing aid. So the first request specifically is to approve the home ownership creation program. This was formerly the fee reimbursement program. We're proposing some changes that sort of spread how it may be used, hence the change for the name. So that is the first request. Our changes to that policy and then establishing as a program permanently, no longer being considered a pilot. I would like to say if you were to approve these guidelines, we are also proposing a funding source for this now. And once those funds are spent, we would come back to council for approval for identifying a different funding source. So the funding source would always come to you for approval. All right, so this sort of explains what was previously approved and what the fee reimbursement program was. The council approved to repurpose or allocate $500,000 of ARPA funds for a pilot program. The pilot offered up to $20,000 in city fee reimbursements for the development of for-sale housing. That for-sale housing had to be priced at $350,000 or below, and the applicant was required to demonstrate how that reimbursement benefited the buyer. Why did you approve this? Why did we recommend it? I think this is a slide you've seen often, but it essentially shows you what our top 5 housing needs are in our community. And this definitely supports new home ownership opportunities. Really, our goal here is to create new home ownership opportunities to spur the market, to increase our supply of for-sale housing specifically. If you're curious how the program went, we think it went well. It supported 35 units, totaling about $223,000. So most of them did not get the full reimbursement of $20,000. It's whatever they actually paid in fees. Most were much less than that. That did come from 3 different organizations as well. We collected about $1,500 in administrative fees, so that covers staff time processing this because we did have to bring them to council. And then the remaining that was set aside was reallocated to the Maywood 2 project, which I'll discuss soon. So just a reminder of how those funds were used. But we would say it was successful in achieving that objective of creating or supporting for-sale housing. I would say in all those cases, the reimbursement was applied essentially as down payment assistance to the home buyer. All right, I'll spend some time on this slide. So this is focusing on the changes we're recommending to this program. I would say really what we're trying to achieve here is how do we spur the market to create for-sale housing? We've got a lot of feedback we've collected since this pilot program, both from housing advocates with the Coalition for Rochester Area Housing, as well as builders and developers. And I would say it's our perspective, this is the best program that we can support that considers both sides of that. They're both going to ask for different changes, but we would say we took all that feedback and this is the best program, all things considered. So we are proposing 2 ways to qualify for what I would say just funding support for sale housing. One is the reimbursement route, similar to how we had it before. What we're changing is the maximum sale to qualify to go that route. So before it was $350,000, got a lot of feedback requesting flexibility to reflect changes in the market and incomes among others. What we're recommending is setting a max price that would be affordable to households earning 115% of the area median income, which this year, based on incomes, would be a home valued at about 429,000. So we make a lot of assumptions I can get to if needed, but we basically work backwards to say, well, this is what a household would earn. We make some assumptions based on property taxes, insurance, work backwards. This is the max. Keep in mind the maximum. A lot of assumptions in what someone could afford. 115% AMI is pretty intentional. You'll see that be consistent with a lot of for sale programs. Minnesota Housing has a similar cap. The Coalition for Rochester Area Housing has a similar cap for their program, and we're always looking to leverage existing local programs to support housing. We would still cap reimbursement at $20,000. As mentioned, actually no request that we got exceeded that. So we were intentional with that amount. So that's the one path. The other one's a little more complex, and really our goal with this one is how do we support just general volume of housing? You've all heard this before. We need about 960 homes per year now for sale specifically to make up for the losses we've had since 2020. So how do we incentivize large scale developments of for sale housing? And I would argue really we're trying to, we know they're happening. How do we support them at a scale of say $500,000 or less? So another pathway to qualify is for proposals over 50 units. They have to have a portion of units to meet that maximum sale price, $429,000, to qualify for an upfront subsidy. So we're offering more of an incentive. And in that case, we want to see the price of the home lowered as a result of the subsidy. So it's different. And in that case, we would also, as mentioned, require a portion of the units be capped at a value. And I will note this is a change on the slide. It's correct in the RCA, so we make sure that that gets corrected. But when you're looking at the scale there of how many units proposed and the percentage that needs to be 429, it changed. But essentially, we're asking for about 30 to 40 units per subdivision to meet that. A couple other things I would mention requiring the second pathway that is very different. Why should we support large scale proposals with higher priced homes? It does support for sale housing. It creates diversity in housing prices and styles. It helps to pencil out proposals with a mix of prices, creating less risk. And really our goal here is to spur the market. The guidelines point out that funding could support dwellings built at 500,000 or less, but they still have to have a portion that's 429 or less. Really, we're also trying to consider how can we spur the market to create more housing under that cap, right? In 2023, we had about 33 newly constructed homes that were built at that value of 500,000 or less. So we know that's a need. We recognize this is not a traditional approach that the city has taken before. We recognize it takes a lot of innovation and a collective approach and flexibility to have an impact in the space. And frankly, that's the feedback that we've gotten for sale housing specifically. All right, I'll continue on because they're all related, if that's all right. Other changes, so that was the biggest change I would say. Other changes, we've asked for staff to approve the reimbursement path administratively. So before we had to go to council for all of them, this one's pretty straightforward. So it's making that change to speed up the process of approving reimbursements. Often they're tied to a closing date, so we're trying to do it quickly. However, upfront subsidies, when we're going to be proposing a big amount, that would always go to council in those cases. We've also increased the rent restriction. The previous program said you have to be restricted for 2 years from renting the property. We would move that up to 5 years. That is consistent with Coalition's revolving loan program, so that's the intentionality. And our goal here is to support for sale housing, not rental housing in this case. What's not changing, the reimbursement path. If you're going that path, as mentioned, it still has a maximum amount of $20,000. The builder is required to demonstrate that the reimbursements, or this isn't mentioned, but the upfront subsidies are benefiting the buyer. If you're going through the reimbursement path, you have to show how it's benefiting, can be down payment assistance or lowering the value of the home. If we're doing the upfront subsidy, we want to see the price of the home come down. And there's lots of tools to do that, cost concessions, lowering the price. We're discussing development agreements with a look back provision. So there's lots of ways that we can do it and individualize it for each ask. And that's what we intend to do to protect our best interests as well as these future homeowners. Another change that we're keeping was to only reimburse 75% of fees paid within the last 3 years. So some developers might have paid for land or zoning fees years ago. And so that was intentional on our part to capture and reimburse fees paid now and in the future with a little amount if it was paid recently. So that was intentional. All right, I'm going to transition into how we're going to pay for this program for now, and that is through the Affordable Housing Aid Fund. So this is a funding source available through the state, through some of the surplus that was had last year. This is a one-time funding in 2023, and it's available now. We are anticipating the same amount in 2024, but that's all we know for now, these 2 years. The city of Rochester has been awarded $545,926. So we're essentially recommending to council, you split that in half. You allocate part of it to the Maywood Phase 2 for fee waivers. So I'll catch you up on that because I need to explain how we're moving things around. But essentially that was a program that we previously funded with the funding we had for the fee reimbursement program. So we're changing that source, and that would free up that original source for the homeownership creation program. I'll come back to that. And the other amount, we're recommending to allocate $272,967 to a revolving abatement program for homeowners. So to kind of restate what I just mentioned, because I know it's a lot of moving around of funds, specifically Maywood Phase 2. So just to remind you, about a year ago, council approved to reallocate our funding set aside for the fee reimbursement program to support the county's Maywood Phase 2 multifamily project. And so really we're just asking to change that funding source so we have a different one for the newly created home ownership creation program. Just a reminder of what Maywood Phase 2, it's now called Trailside Apartments. It's a multifamily apartment, deeply affordable units. Some information there, but just wanted to remind you of what you approved about a year ago. So that's our recommendation to reallocate funding. All right, so with all that in mind, I do have 2 requests before you this evening. One is to approve and adopt that home ownership creation program. The other is to approve and adopt the allocation of affordable housing aid funding. Staff, what I didn't talk much about is the abatement program. We will come back to council with formal program guidelines for revolving this program. This is just our intention for now. The vision as mentioned in the RCA is a revolving program, the ability to provide that funding upfront. Most communities do a rebate program. We would prefer to give it upfront so it can be used towards down payment assistance. And then when paid, it just goes back so that it creates a revolving program. So that's our vision now. And that would come back to council in a formal setting. Those are the numbers again, 545,000 approximately, and splitting between those 2 allocations. With that, I'll pause for questions or comments.
That was a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Palmer.
Well, that was really clear. Thank you. I appreciate that. I like the flexibility that you have on it, and you heard compliments today, which is always nice to get compliments during the open comment period. So that's nice to get. The upfront subsidies. Why do you want staff to approve that? Why not just have you why are you asking the council to approve it? Why not just staff?
That's a good question. I think a reason is we imagine this being a larger investment than what we would do with the fee reimbursement program. We imagine each one to be unique as well. So I think for those reasons, we recognize council would want to be informed and have the final decision on whether those should be approved.
I guess I would see an informational item, but I don't see why we'd have to approve it, but that's just my opinion. The other question for you is on the land trust. If that maximum house price was the houses in the land trust, that would change that dollar value?
That's a fair question. The land trust supports households earning 80% of their median income or below, so that would be too high, right? So it would require additional subsidy to get it to that value, whether that's from the land trust or another partner. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that would have to be addressed because that amount is too high.
But it's max 115.
Yeah, so it could be lower. Yes, yes, yes.
So are you trying to ask if the land cost would be factored in?
Correct.
Ah.
Thank you. Good question.
Yeah.
Would you mind explaining your question one more time for me
Sure.
to consider this?
So you have a maximum price of the house before 29.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that's a lot price that's included in that. So if I have a builder who decides to put it in the land trust at whatever zero cost, then I'm assuming the price of the house would go down by that amount.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, it would.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other 115 comes in with state law with TIF financing also.
Yes, that's correct.
So that's where that number keeps popping up.
Yep.
And you've reached out to other people and people have used the program in the past and you took their suggestions into.
Yeah, I would say this program, admittedly doesn't reflect every piece of feedback we've received, right? But generally, it is reflective of feedback we've got from folks who have used the program and folks that leverage the program, like the coalition.
And then the Olmsted County Mailwood project is something that we've approved last year, but it's a great program for Rochester overall. Is that senior housing, if I remember correctly?
Yes, senior housing.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Wall.
Thank you. Staying on that same slide, the 50-plus unit developments, that still refers to the fee reimbursements up to $20,000.
We were intentional about not putting a cap on what one could qualify if going that route. I think we recognize that we want to consider each project sort of as you would with a TIF district, if you will. So we were intentional about not putting a maximum amount, which is another reason why we would want to bring it back to council, because you're not committing to that at this time. 20,000 is a good general number, but that was an intentional inclusion in the policy if you're going that route for eligibility.
So what criteria would the council use to determine what an appropriate subsidy would be for 250 houses?
Yeah, so we would be bringing forth a recommendation, right? So that wouldn't be on you to determine, but give an example of a subdivision with 200 homes, and they say, well, I should have the math up here, 200 homes, and they say 40 of them are going to be priced at 300,000 below, the rest are 500,000. We would, for example, support something that equates to about 20,000 per lot, in showing that brings the price down further. So that's an example, if you will.
For the 40 houses?
For all 200 if they're 500,000 or below. And that's another reason why we would want council approval on that.
And what funding source would that be?
Right,
from?
that would
Okay.
identify, we'd have to identify a funding source as well. Certainly, we have some in mind that would take council approval, such as economic vitality, but if it exceeded the allocation amount we're asking for tonight, that's why it would come back to council, because it would also identify that funding source.
And you also indicated that the developer would have to show that this benefits the first buyer of the home. And how long does the first buyer of the home need to be owner of that home before selling it?
Currently, we do not have a restriction or a policy on that. I would say to some degree that's intentional, and recognizing that our goal here is to spur supply and really just add to supply. I think to some degree we recognize it's also a process for building wealth, and so we're trying to find a balance there between how to support that versus restrict that. But currently, that is not listed within our guidelines to restrict mobility of housing.
Okay, so theoretically, without realtor fees, if a person benefited by $20,000 on fee reimbursement and could sell the house in 10 months for 20,000 more than was bought, what was the original purchase, that would be okay.
The way it's written right now,
that.
the way it's written right now, that's acceptable, I would say.
Okay.
They would have some tax implications that they would need to consider, but yes, they probably could.
Councilmember Keen.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions. I know you said like on the abatement thing, we'll learn more later, but we're setting aside some of this funding. Can you just give a high level on what we're talking about, what abatement means in this case?
Yeah, we're talking about abating property taxes. So if you recall in previous presentations regarding economic vitality, we showed you that, I'm going to really guess some numbers here. So just bear with me. A home priced around $350,000, you'd probably, if you're abating just the city's property taxes, is like $3,000 and probably off a small-ish amount. So taking just the city's taxing authority and paying that upfront for 3 to 5 years to use as down payment assistance is the idea, essentially.
But that wouldn't be a revolving fund, then that would be spent.
So we're proposing to use this funding to provide a portion of that upfront, 90% of it, and then they would still pay back the property taxes in time, and that would go back to the program, so it could be used as down payment assistance.
So there's a way to make it, you mentioned revolving, and I couldn't see how it's going to, so I'll watch for details as they come up. As far as the one thing that when I spent some time with this over the weekend, I couldn't get my head around was pricing houses based on AMI. And I think through discussions, I think we would all agree there's a lot of assumptions between what somebody makes and what a house price is. Can you go through that a little bit just to shed some light for the public?
Would you like me to talk about some of the math specifically of it?
No, not this specifically, but I mean, it's the conceptual problem of saying like how much someone makes versus how much they have in the bank. How much someone makes that's retired on a fixed income, but is selling another house.
Right.
Could they use it and come in and take advantage of these programs? In ways that we did not expect it to happen.
Sure. I think that's possible because the only thing that we are qualifying in this case is the maximum price of the home. I would say, however, at some point, tax increment financing or TIF policies are going to come back to you for sale housing, and that to qualify that route, you do have to specifically income qualify the household. So these work together in some degree, but there was some intentionality to be more flexible with this, to not income qualify. But essentially, it takes an average size household, what their income would be at 115% AMI, what they could afford if we're defining affordable housing for a monthly mortgage payment. A lot of assumptions. Debt is hard to consider, right? So that's why it's the maximum. We're considering essentially no debt, and that would be the very most someone could afford.
Okay. With that, I guess I think I'd like to put an motion on the table.
No, we have a couple more questions. Councilmember Kirkpatrick.
Thank you. I too really like slide 6, so stay there. Thanks for numbering the slides, by the way. Love that. So in the bottom image, the blue image, I'm having difficulty understanding what this rectangle means. Will you please explain it to me?
Yes. So if a large scale development like a subdivision were to come forward and request upfront funding in order to provide for sale housing at $500,000 or less, they're required a portion of their subdivision has to be $429,000 or less. So for example, if they come with 200 homes, 30 of them have to be priced at $429,000 or less to qualify for funding support.
So can you explain to me what these numbers mean? 50 to 100,
Sure.
60%, 100 to 150, 30%? That's, I think, the difficulty I'm having understanding what that means.
Yes, so that refers to how many units would be proposed in a subdivision. So if a subdivision has 50 to 100 units, 60% of those are required to meet that maximum value, and then going up from there. 100 to 150 units, 30% are required to be 429,000 or below, and so on. Does that make more sense?
Got it. So is there any further breakdown on affordability of housing with our population? Meaning, what percentage of our population in Rochester is 115% AMI?
I don't have that information at my disposal. I would say we landed on that number as a maximum. I think we're going to consider proposals with lower priced homes, right? I think what's asked of us is flexibility, and our goal really is to add to the supply. So it wasn't a focus, I would say, on the lower priced housing. We were focused on 115% AMI because it leveraged other program requirements, but I don't have that answer at my disposal.
Are you trying to ask, like,
Yeah.
is this in response to community need or in response to what's buildable, or is that what you're trying to get
Well,
at?
I guess I see it as a system. We have a housing system, right? I'm trying to look at this as through a systems lens. And if, for instance, the majority of our population in Rochester makes a fair amount less than 115% AMI, to whom are these homes going to be purchased by? If we all require housing, but a larger percentage of us make less and a smaller percentage of us make more, who are we building these houses for?
Sure.
I think the data is really important here, and that's, I guess, what I'm trying to get to, and that's why those numbers were a little confusing to me. I didn't know if they were percent AMI or percentage of homes in a development. And the Maxfield study continues to come up. It was brought up during the open comment period here today, and then earlier in your presentation, we saw the cover for the Maxfield. I think that's what I remember seeing. And we continue to talk about that, yet we continue to fall short on the houses that we're building for homeownership. And having a broadly diverse community, socioeconomically. I guess this program is a little concerning to me with the ward that I represent.
Sure. If I could respond just briefly, I think one point to highlight is your question for data is a fair one. We know area median income is a distribution of incomes, so that's a fair question. I would say it's certainly a maximum. We know that in order for folks to build these things, the market has to buy it. So at some point, the market should correct itself as well. That's an easy answer for me to say, but I also recognize there is a distribution of income as well, but recognize we're really just going for flexibility here. That's not to say a subdivision with very low price dwellings we would want to support, right? So that's our perspective, that we're just really looking for flexibility to support what the market's asking for.
Awesome. Is there any way that we could perhaps tie in the next couple of years after implementation to see, what percent of our population is able to utilize this program? And also on the developer side, of course, they need to at least break even. It's very difficult to build lower income housing. I understand that with the price point of material supply, et cetera. But can we somehow attach something to this where you can come back to us in a couple years, or we can request data showing that we're meeting the need for our broad population that requires housing?
I think generally, yes, I'll say we're going to measure the success of this and try to identify how we're meeting the needs. I won't agree to the specifics, but I would say, yes, that's a very good point and something we would want to do.
Okay, thank you, Taryn.
And I think this is part of one vein of a broader strategy.
Correct.
So is that what you were going to say?
Yeah, thank you, President Carlson. I was just going to say, not only do we want to measure this, but we want to work with our partners at the Housing Coalition. We get the Maxfield study updated every couple of years, and that will start to tell us how we're moving the needle in the various programs. So it's part of a system along with other partners that are investing in housing in the community.
Thank you. Question, Councilmember Dennis?
Thank you. Thank you so much. So as you know, I go to several of the Housing Coalition meetings. Appreciate you presenting and the working together. And I pulled up, you had sent me back, it was a little bit old, I guess, from 22. But for a family of four, it's low income if a family of four makes just a 66,900, so $67,000 for a family of four, low income. And as I mentioned before, the second largest employer in Rochester is the school district. And as we heard with many of the struggles, hands are tied. Myself working full time, making 16,000 a year. Many hourly employees make poverty level wages. And so I really think this is what Councilmember Kirkpatrick has brought up with the need. Like, there's a huge need, like the second largest employer, you're talking, not all the other employers in Rochester, but if there's so many people who are going to qualify, we're talking, it's mind blowing. Like, my family of four, I have different dynamics going on, but it's 16,000 a year. A lot of people making under 20,000, and there's no way they could make that kind of. So my question a little bit is, knowing what I know with the moving parts and how the complexity and the extreme need, I'm a huge supporter of everything that we're doing to increase housing. So I commend all the work you have done and your the team has done. But I always am a little bit confused on really how are we working together with the county? Because the city is workforce housing and the county is affordable housing. And there is different, of course, definitions of those. So the city is, technically what I've heard, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the city doesn't deal in as much in affordable housing as the county. How has that been worked together with all of these wonderful programs to make sure that I don't think we should stay in our lane. I think we should merge our lanes and really work together. Has that been worked on to meet the needs of all people?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think those points were made, so I'm happy to speak to that. and it is a presentation I provided a long time ago, so maybe I'll show that graphic again one day, right? But we know that affordable housing is a spectrum and there are different definitions. And essentially, I would say that the county receives resources, frankly, and support that is intentioned to serve those earning lower incomes, 30% or median income and below. So as a result, there are different gaps, I guess, for incomes above that. So we just recognize that the county gets funding from the state, frankly, and they're better positioned for that. And we support in different ways, like the example here with Trailside and how we can waive fees to make, frankly, give them the ability to take state tax credits, right? So there are different unique ways that we try to partner with them where we can. That's one example. And for the city, I would also say we recognize when we're building multifamily housing, there's a lot of other different subsidies and state programs that are available. And so we support those where we can, city and the county do, and the coalition when possible. So for sale housing has less opportunities and subsidies, right? We know we're supporting a different income level maybe than these other areas, but there's less subsidies available to them. And that's a reason why we want to be intentional with creating some programs, because we recognize it fills a different need to provide for sale housing. So I'm sort of answering your question, but sort of not. But I would say generally, city coalition and the county meet regularly as part of the coalition to discuss what our different programs are and how we can leverage them. So organically, we're doing it that way. Is something we have in mind. And I know I can't speak completely on behalf of the county, but they are starting to enter the space of redevelopment as well and how they can support our work at different income levels. So we are doing it certainly in innovative ways, and I'm sure there are ways we could do more.
All right, thank you. All right, we have several more questions. Councilmember Palmer, did you have another question?
Yeah, it's my understanding that the most help that we can give is when we don't have a lot of ties or a lot of requirements on that. Is that what you keep hearing?
I would say that's the feedback I got, particularly from builders and developers.
Okay, and I know that when we first started this, and I've talked with over 80 different people on how to get more houses, this really is just trying to get more houses out there in the market.
Correct.
And doing that adds to the supply, which hopefully will help out with price and everything else.
Yeah, exactly. We know there's a lot of housing needs. This is really an attempt to make a dent in the supply, which in theory should help with other housing needs. There's other ways to support 30 to 50% AMI. We have needs and we all know that. Supply is a difficult one to make a dent in, and that's why we want to be intentional in affecting our supply specifically.
And being on the coalition, I know that there are a lot of programs to help out people acquire homes or down payments and stuff. Is that correct?
Yeah, specifically the Coalition for Rochester Area Housing has a low interest construction loan. I think I got the program name right, and it has the same requirements as this program. So that was done intentionally. So it gives builders and developers a way to get financing with no interest to build quickly. It reduces the risk. And then they could also apply for this to benefit the homeowner in the end. So yes.
And so my observation of the city and the county and the coalition working together has gotten better. Would you say that's true?
I think so. I've been here since 2020, so it's been pretty good since then. But yes, I would say so.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Wall.
So I'm still trying to figure this thing out about flipping of houses. A lot of things I'll just project. A 200 house development, 25% need to be below the 429 or 429 or below. So the rest are 500,000, 550, whatever. Yes. And all the houses get the same subsidy.
Not necessarily. We would want to look at each one differently, I guess I would say. And so there's some intentionality of giving the lower priced homes more of a subsidy. So that's not set in stone, I guess, that they would get equal subsidy.
Okay. So then I'll go back to say the $400,000 house. And they get a $20,000 subsidy, very round numbers. So it's sold for $380,000. What would prevent a real shrewd land baron from coming in and saying, I think, there's a housing shortage in Rochester, and I've heard a major employer might be bringing some extra people to town. I think I can flip these houses in 3 months. I'm going to buy 10 of these.
The way the guidelines are written right now, there isn't anything preventing that. I would say since we plan to bring each one back to council, there's an opportunity to include specific requirements for a subdivision if we're going to support it in that way, to have restraints on mobility or selling in that sense. So right now, the way the guidelines are proposed, that's not included, but that can be included on individual large scale requests.
I mean, there's just a lot of shrewd people who know how to work systems. Okay.
All right, Councilmember Keen. Councilmember Bransford.
I was curious about the switch from the 2 to 5 years for renting and why potential you didn't go higher on that, because one of the things that I see in the inner neighborhoods, and I'm not sure if it's true in Slatterly Park, is there are blocks getting decimated with VRBOs, Airbnbs, income properties are not properties are being bought and turned into rental. This is a significant strain, I think, on supply. I would actually like to have seen it more than 5 years. And so I was curious, is it just a round number? Was there pushback from a stakeholder? Did that raise somebody's hackles, or was that just a number?
Yeah, I would say this is a diplomatic recommendation based on what we've heard of wanting to go both ways. It's intentional to match the coalition's revolving loan program. There's some sense of administering this as well. So you'll see it written into the purchase agreement to restrict renting, and then it's sort of on the city to make sure it's not rented. We'd rather go that route than having it be paid back to us. So it's a lot of thought around the technicalities of it. That's the intention of it. When you're looking at a large scale development, they might want to propose a portion be rentals. It helps to pencil out as well. We wouldn't be supporting those ones. But once again, it's a combination of flexibility, and our recommendation of all things considered, the best recommendation was 5 years. It's fair.
Well, I think that's her point, that she's hearing recommendations across the spectrum. Okay. Did you have a follow-up, Councilmember Kirkpatrick?
So that was my question too, and what you had brought up, why are these rentable at all? But to your broader concern, I know I have mentioned a couple times this reduction in the verbos or the Airbnbs that are in our community for homes that are less than $350,000, our most affordable housing stock. And how do we, what do you need? Do you need a CIA? How do we bring that forward to the council, or how do we get you to look at that to reduce the amount of those? And we talked about it just a couple of meetings ago. I'm not talking about the folks that have a verbo, you know, in a duplex or on-site property owner, on-site manager. I'm talking about the other ones that are usurping these NOAA houses, neighborhoods, close in.
A little bit
So I
not
think-
germane to the,
But I'm just saying, I'm bringing this up again, and
can you have a conversation offline with Ms. Edens about what would be a next step with that?
I can, and I'd like Ms. Zelms to come in on that, just because we had talked about.
For the
even
record, like this was raised last time and there are significant legal concerns to doing something like that.
You had mentioned
especially- and
districts
so
or perhaps census tract or
Like,
not census tract. I remember
Want
you
more
adding
than 30 minutes
information.
of work on that, then yes, you probably would need to do a council initiated action.
Okay.
And for me to give you that amount of legal feedback probably requires us to have a contract with a legal firm that focuses on that. That's what we did in another community where we were trying to limit certain uses for privately owned property that doesn't fall within our zoning.
All right, thank you. That's additional information. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Councilmember Palmer, a final question?
Yeah, just quick with Mr. Wall's concerns. I'm not a financial advisor, but most people with closing costs and everything else, any profit you made or anything you thought you were going to make is going to be eaten up. Most people, 3 to 5 years is the advice to own a house. Other than that, don't own a house. Again, I'm not your financial advisor.
All right, motion, Councilmember Keen?
So I was going to make the motion to adopt a resolution approving the proposed home ownership creation program to support the creation of owner occupied housing and approving the allocation of 2023 affordable housing funds.
Second.
All right, Councilmember Keen, you have the floor.
Yeah, again, I have the benefit of being able to go through this because I had a lot of confusion going through this package at first, and you know, the things like the using of AMI and what abatement really means. But again, I got some good guidance. I also was getting input from principals, people that are very interested in what happens with this on both sides. And again, what I did hear a little off to the side comment was that, well, the builders wanted a lot more from this, and the affordable housing advocates don't think we went far enough. So we probably are near the right spot. But I think the thing that I wanted to, again, if I were to try to summarize this, I think this is about affordable housing in the long term, but the near term thing, I think Councilmember Palmer touched on it. What we're really doing here is give incentives to add to the inventory. And I have become convinced over time that adding to the inventory in the 300 or even a little bit more in the market rate housing will reduce pressure on the lower end and have the desired effect. And that's what I see you trying to do here. We have a resolution here. We're going to approve that, but I think you and staff and others beyond my capability are going to be trying to make real rules for how this is going to work. And I think there are some devil in the details. We've heard it today about like, what are these possible misuses? And let's make sure, I mean, I think the tighter you get, probably the more restrictive the program is. And this is the difficulty, but at the same time, I think we know what our goals are. I appreciate the idea that when we're dealing with big money ones here, it's going to come back and get scrutiny. I hope that doesn't bog programs down. But I mean, when I start looking at numbers that talk about 50, a track of 50 new houses or 100, and boy, that would really be nice to see in the next 6 months.
Thanks for those comments, Councilmember Keen. I know that it's been a journey for you to get to a point of this type of support, and I think it's really an important component of our broader strategy. If this was all we were doing or all the community was doing, it would be very concerning, but I think it does fill a need, and it's nice to see staff working across different stakeholders to find a middle ground. And again, how are we doing next year? And you know, what are we seeing? Because we have such an incredible need. So appreciate the work on the supply side. And then I'm very supportive of the trailside apartment fee waiver. I know that required some shifting around, but it's really cool to have us working together with the county to make those units happen. Any other comments? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Edens. All right. We are moving on to the home ownership, or no, excuse me, transfer of homestead trails lots to First Homes. And we have Mr. Brent Svenby here to introduce the item. Go ahead when you're ready.
Yep. Good evening, Council President Carlson, members of the council, Brent Svenby, Community Development Department. Tonight, we're here to talk about the conveyance of 6 lots within the Homestead Trails development. So the request before you this evening is for the approval of a purchase agreement to transfer 6 lots within Homestead Trails first replat to First Homes properties. Just going back to some prior actions on the lots itself. This goes back to 2021 when the council at that time discussed a number of city-owned properties that were put onto a list that you talked about disposing of those properties at some point. So we have a couple of properties that we recently sold for the city that were on this list. And this evening, we're here to talk about the 6 lots within the Homestead Trails development. We did provide an update to the council in March of 2023 on these lots. And at that time, it was discussed that we were discussing about conveying these lots to First Homes properties. Homestead Trails, the 6 lots and the lots, they're the land to the west and to the north were acquired back in the early 1990s. They were acquired for parkland acquisition. And actually, the neighborhood at that time also provided some funding to help acquire the land to the west and to the north. I have met with the neighborhood representatives a handful of times discussing these lots and development of the lots. About 10 years ago or so, the neighborhoods developed a garden on the 2 lots at the corner of Kings Court and 16th Avenue Southeast. We have had discussions with the neighborhood and the Parks Department in regards to moving that lot or moving that garden to the end of Kings Court. And I did talk today with Mr. Whitman, and we are still agreeable to working with the neighborhood on relocating that garden to the end of Kings Court. So we would like to convey the lots to First Homes. We would like to convey the 4 lots along 8.5 Street this year to First Homes. And then we would convey the other 2 lots next year to First Homes, and that would allow for the garden to remain on those 2 lots this year. And then this fall, we will work with the neighborhood to relocate the garden to at the west end of Kings Court. By conveying the lots to First Homes, the lots will be put into the community land trust. So the houses that get built there, any owner that would purchase those would have to be at that 80% AMI level or less to purchase a home. And then if the lots are not developed by the end of 2026, the lots would be conveyed back to the city. Any questions?
Councilmember Palmer?
A couple things. One, I appreciate reaching out to the county and coming up with an answer that just makes it easier for tonight. I'm all in favor of putting these in the land trust. But we have 4 lots here along 8.5 Street. Isn't the one lot the sign and unbuildable?
Yeah, correct. The very first lot has the sign for the development, and it also has some infrastructure that kind of runs through the middle of the lot.
It's unbuildable.
Yeah, in my discussions with First Homes, they may possibly be looking at like re-subdividing those lots to make a little bit bigger lots for those homes. So they may be able to get 4 houses in there, but just by doing some reshifting and some lot lines in there.
And isn't the sewer and water already stubbed into these lots?
Correct.
So that would be harder to rearrange the property lines to make that match.
Well, not necessarily, because the sub-outs don't coincide with the property lines. If it's like in between the property lines, they could extend those
But if
lines.
I move one 10 feet and the other one 10 feet, pretty soon I'm
Correct.
I'm
Yeah.
in the sewer.
And and they can work through that.
Okay, so I'm all in favor of this land going to land trust. What I don't understand is why we don't want these houses built prior to Thanksgiving this year. And so if First Homes can't get them done this year, because we've been working on this for about 3 years, why can't we just have First Homes have them done by Thanksgiving?
The lots on the 4 lots on the south side.
All 5 lots.
Well, because we're trying to work with the neighborhood here to allow them to have their garden here on those 2 lots. We've relocated the garden at the end of the growing season this year. Based on my discussions with First Homes, if this goes through, they will start working on house plans and trying to find a builder. And it's their intention to move as quickly as possible to get home to develop on these lots.
Well, okay, let's set the garden aside for a second, okay? There's really no reason that you can't go out for an RFP and get a builder to build the 4 houses and get it done by Thanksgiving. If First Homes can do that, I'm all in favor of giving them First Homes. But if they're the middleman to go out and get a builder, why don't we just put an RFP out and say, let's build these 4 lots?
That's what First Homes is produced.
You're talking 2025, I'm talking 2024.
No, I'm sorry. Well, they're going to develop the 4 lots hopefully this year.
So we'll have people living in those 4 lots by the end of the year.
Well, I'm not going to guarantee you that, but they're going to be conveyed to First Homes, and they're going to start working on the process to get homes constructed on those 4 lots.
Okay, but when I read your information here, it sounds like to me is that it's going to be the end of next year before they would have all the houses completed. Again, just on the 4 lots, I'm not talking about the other 2.
No, that's not the intention. The intention is once the land is conveyed to First Homes, they are going to start working on finding a builder, drawing up house plans, and getting homes built on those lots.
Okay.
I'm not going to guarantee it that's going to be built this year, but they are going to start working on construction of homes.
Well, I would like a guarantee they'll be in there by Thanksgiving.
There's so many ifs in development world as far as getting approved plans, grading plans, etc., to get a house built by November.
I mean, I have pretty good experience in the building business, and we did a Habitat for Humanity house from start to framing in 30 days. And that didn't take us too long. We built a house at Camp Olson for 6 weeks, and we from start to finish. So, you know, if First Homes can't get it done by Thanksgiving, I'm not particularly sure that I'm interested in giving them to First Homes.
All right, we'll talk about that under discussion after a motion, but for now we'll stick to questions. Council member,
I'm asking them questions.
what's the
Sure, that's
question?
an answerable question. I think
Yeah,
it was
can't answer that
answered
for
and
First
I
Homes.
don't think we
can't
can
answer that for the city,
guarantee.
because if the city goes up for RSP, it could be
Okay, but the
6 months
question,
before
the
we get.
question is first homes, can they get it done, have people living in those 4 houses by the end of the year?
I can't guarantee that and first homes can't guarantee that either because there's a process you have to go through to develop property.
So just say, like any construction or a private development, some of that will depend on their supply chain, their construction worker. I mean, to actually have somebody living there, obviously, there are any number of things that could happen. We could have a wet summer since we had no rain, no precipitation all winter. Those types of things could create challenges for any builder, regardless of what that is. So just for perspective, I don't know that you would be able to guarantee any of those things. Typically, what we've done when we've done those things is put some sort of requirement, and if it's not built by that time, then we come back. But if they're basically underway, typically the council has extended the agreements, for example, agreements for other developments that we've worked with that had challenges and then needed to have time to overcome them. So I think all that's being said here is that that hasn't been contemplated, that we're going to guarantee that houses are going to be designed and built out of the ground within that short of a time frame. Even a private person going and purchasing a lot and getting plans and getting their house under construction and having a closing date doesn't always make the closing date when they're building a home with the builder.
Okay, the next question I have is on these garden lots. Why would we treat this subdivision different than any other one? And isn't it more important to have houses put here than it is a garden?
I'm not sure how we're treating it different from different development because, I mean, this development has a garden in there, so we're working with the neighborhoods to get it relocated after the growing season this year.
But this is parkland, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
and it's been conveyed to the city, so it's no longer parkland.
Correct.
Okay, and they could, if they wanted to, the parks could put them a garden at the end of King Court, correct?
Correct.
That's the plan.
Yep.
I guess I just see having homes built there is more important than having a garden in that exact location. That's, I guess I'm not asking a question.
Councilmember Keen?
Yeah, this is a little bit, I don't know if we'll have the answers to this, but I see that through our process, this was built as a planned unit development, but now it's R2 zoning.
Correct.
I believe there are probably some covenants on how this area was built that that'll be in the plats that we're going to convey to first homes that they'll have to follow, or do we know?
No, I don't believe there's covenants, but when it was a PUD, then you had those certain house plans that were approved in the PUD process. But with the UDC adoption, the PUD standards went away. So
I'm looking over behind you at
we are committed to working with the neighborhood on going out to the neighborhood and sitting down with them and going over the house plans with the neighborhood.
Okay.
But it's not restricted.
So
to-
technically, there's no, I mean, I know there's no city restriction, but I don't know if we own property that has covenants at the way they were platted and we convey the land to somebody else, they still have those covenants in there too, don't they?
Yeah, but I don't believe there's covenants. There was a PUD.
Okay, there was, okay, this is important distinction. Okay, so there, okay, all right,
I didn't see any covenants that were recorded on the property.
okay.
Yetzer, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you. Brent, I would just concur what Brent's saying. I think oftentimes people think of a PUD plan as a covenant, but it's a different document than what an actual covenant is. I don't believe there's a covenant recorded with these. We can certainly check that, but the PUD has gone away.
Okay, thank you.
And we are committed to working with the neighborhood. We'll meet with them.
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
house plan.
and this is the look and feel type of trying to match? Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Kirkpatrick, question?
Thank you. I believe this neighborhood association, Homestead Trails, is under the impression that the architecture for the proposed housing is going to be quite similar. So I guess to Mr. Palmer's point, if the architecture is quite similar, and as I guess two-part question, I understand it when the land development manual became the UDC, the PUD disappeared and therefore all of the guidelines for the PUD disappeared. So if we've got a neighborhood that's expecting architecture to be the same, but we've got city codes and ordinance that say that they don't have to be the same, but we probably got plans from this development that would make it really easy to build these houses quickly if you just implemented these building plans that for the numerous houses that have already been built.
The-
Do you see where I'm going with this a little bit, maybe?
Yes, but I would venture to guess that there is almost a 0% chance that the building code is the same as what those plans were. So while the design could be similar, the plans will absolutely have to be updated.
Sure, but the look and the feel would
And
have to
that's
be
what
the
we said.
same.
Yep, and
So-
that's why we're gonna sit down with the neighborhood and
Right.
we'll go over the plans with the neighborhood.
So
First pass.
therefore, how are you going to get the amount of units in here that you're suggesting you can get in here? That's not the same look and feel. And the neighborhood, I understand, is adamant about not desiring to have an excess of homes than the lots that are already provided to be built on, because this neighborhood is already quite dense with low AMI housing. And even if you look at, for instance, Councilmember Palmer suggested Habitat for Humanity homes going up quickly. I understand there's in excess of 25 of those in the southeast quadrant of the city, and there's less than 10 in any other quadrant of the city, 0 in the northeast, as I understand it. Why are we putting more low-income housing in an already low-income housing saturated area, census tract, census blocks of the city? That seems counter to the presentation that Ms. Edens just gave us, where we want a diversity of homes, where we want a diversity of folks.
I mean, I'll say, you have a mixture of incomes in this neighborhood. They're not all low income people that live in this neighborhood. You have a mixture of incomes in this homestead trails.
And 80% AMI is not considered low income.
Well, it is compared to the last presentation that we saw and the homes that were being built there. You can't see it, but just to the south of 8.5 Street Southeast, there are 2 Section 8 HUD home units. Homestead Green is just to the south of these units, and I believe Homestead Terrace is just 2 blocks south of that. And then you have Homestead Village just to the southwest. So we are packing in to a neighborhood that I know has had numerous discussions with you, Mr. Svenby, about a look and a feel that isn't just about NIMBYism. I really don't think it is, quite frankly, because of what those gardens do, what they provide for this area, for all of the folks that traverse this trail. And other council members can't see, but if you continue north on this street, 16th Avenue, it goes straight up through 19th Avenue and the trail that goes past the Heinz Center and OMC. And this is a well-traveled path by many folks, including, for instance, yeah, we do. So how is it that you're telling us that you can put more units here when you're also saying that the neighborhood is talking with you about this, and we know that
I don't
only
know how
3
you get
units
more-
are supposed to
more
be
units
there?
I mean, the most you can get there is 6, because there's 6 lots. So
Yeah.
I didn't say we're going to create more units than 6.
Which
The
is
most you
this
can get there is 6.
equivalent of the surrounding lots.
Yeah.
Well, I understand that, but you were saying getting 4 down there, and Councilmember Palmer is saying that it's going to become too difficult. And then you mentioned that
If
First
they-
Homes may redevelop
If
it.
they re-subdivided those 4 lots across the bottom to get 4 buildable lots, because you have that infrastructure where you can't build on, but they might be able to reshift those lot lines to get 4 buildable lots, which would not increase the density that it's platted for.
Will First Homes, once it gets transferred to them, be able to subdivide even further to get more lots in than the 4 that are there? Do they have the ability to do that?
We're not gonna get any more. They're gonna shift lot lines to maybe they can get 4 dwellings in there that work.
Out of respect to you, that didn't answer my question. Will First Homes, if they acquire the property, be able to
They have,
subdivide further? For instance, I look at these 4 lots and I'm seeing, wow, you could actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 homes there, with drives going to the north on the court, drives going to the west on 16th, and also drives going to the south on 8.5 Street. Would First Homes have the ability to do that, or any other developer?
the lots aren't deep enough to subdivide that way to get
To get a back-to-back townhome?
Correct.
Okay. So what is the most that the future developer, perhaps it's not First Homes, what is the most that it could be?
Six units,
So 6 units total
correct,
on this area here,
On the
we
6
would
lot.
allow and we could have.
correct.
That's awesome, because that's what's platted here is 6 units, so that means we could possibly keep the other 2 for a garden?
No,
Oh.
6 lots total, 4 lots down there and 4 lots.
Okay, what I'm asking is how far, what I'm asking are the 4 lots on the south here, just sitting on the north side of 8.5
Yep.
Street Southeast,
4 lots is a max.
is the max.
Correct.
A future developer can't subdivide it more than that.
No,
Absolutely no.
they could shift lot lines around to get 4 units on there, but yeah, 4 would be the max, correct.
Okay, all right. That's what that's what I was getting at. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to be confusing. Thank you. Just give you pressure, that's all. Thank you.
Councilmember Palmer.
Okay, so we have 2 styles of homes here. We have the ones that were built in the 90s. They're the ones along 8.5, and as you make the corner onto 16th Avenue. Are we matching those houses?
No, the intention would that to be similar to the attached homes that you see around, was it Neville Court and Kings Court and et cetera.
Okay, those would be very expensive to build. And if the neighborhood has these other homes already, why wouldn't we want to match those houses?
The ones on the west side of 16th Avenue.
On 8.5 and on the 16th Avenue, as you make the corner, there's 3 lots there.
You mean the single family detached homes?
Yes, single family detached.
More than likely.
Excuse me, Councilmember Palmer. Could you speak into your mic more? We can't hear you on the recording, please.
Okay.
Pull your mic down.
I'll just say with the narrowness of the lots, more likely they have to be single family attached dwellings. Because like that, you can't get a home on those lots and meet side yard setbacks without it being attached.
Okay,
So
so my second question is that you keep referring that we're gonna sit down with the neighbors. How are you gonna sit down with 40 neighbors to discuss how to build a house?
but we're gonna present the drawings that First Homes has for the homes, and we'll present it at a meeting, coordinate with whoever wants to show up in the neighborhood.
And so are they gonna be able to say yes or no, or we want windows, or we want this, or would they? So you're just gonna come to them and say an informational meeting?
Yep.
That says, this is the house we're
This is
gonna
what they're
build,
proposing to build, yep,
period.
and take input on it, correct,
And do what?
and take input on the design. But it's,
Okay, you say take input, does that mean that we were obligated to?
no,
Okay, so let's go back to the PUD. The PUD is gone.
Yep.
So now this is the R2 area, is that correct?
correct,
And there's no design standards for R2, correct?
whichever is in the UDC, correct, for side yard setbacks, front yard, rear yard, et cetera.
Okay. And is it my understanding that we don't, as a city, enforce covenants? Is that correct?
Correct.
That would be a civil matter between those that would be in a homeowners association or something of that nature.
And is it my understanding from covenants that if they run out after a certain amount of time, is that true?
There aren't covenants, so what's
There's
the,
no covenants.
why is this
We don't
remain?
enforce covenants, and it's,
Okay.
First Homes is trying to be a good builder and build something that's similar to what's out there now. I mean, it's not gonna be exact, but it's gonna be similar in style of the homes that are out there now.
Okay, and I'm just pointing out that there's 2 styles of home.
Correct, yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Motion?
One other question.
Yeah.
This is kind of a zoning. What is the minimum lot size for R2? Is it 5,000 square?
Then
Sorry?
3,000.
1,000.
3,000. Because I'm looking, these lots are about 3,700. There, you're not going to be subdividing them into a bunch more lots. It's just not going to happen. Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion to convey these
One-
lots to First Homes.
Point of order, Councilmember Kirkpatrick had one more question, then right back to you, Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you. Is anyone from Parks here? I'm curious what the cost is to create this garden in the prairie space and put up the fence. And I guess 2-part or 3-part question. The cost to do that, is that being worked into the parks current budget? Or is that cost going to be passed on to first homes and they will usurp that and then pass that on to the homeowners that are going to be purchasing these homes? Do we know that?
Mr. Woodman is joining virtually.
Yes, I'm here, and thank you for the question. Councilmember Kirkpatrick, Council President, council members, we have talked about providing the garden and we've not discussed exchange of fees. Most of this is going to be labor and just relocating replicating the space they have in the area that Brent has shown on the slide in the park, in Homestead Park.
I can appreciate that it's mostly labor, but I also understand that a fence has been promised. So that would of course be materials. I don't know if there's fencing laying around or not, but the labor is fairly expensive to do that. So I'm just wondering if Parks is basically gifting this and pulling that labor out of an existing budget, or will the cost for this labor and the materials for the fence and preparing the land be passed on to first homes?
Okay, if there was discussion of the fence, I was not part of that, or I don't recall, but so we honestly we feel if this helps if this is a contribution that Parks could make to this effort, we were not looking at an exorbitant cost, and we would absorb that.
And I will say that there is a fence currently around their garden, so that would be, they would take that fence, because they take it down every year, it looks like, and then take that fence and move it over to the new location of where the garden is. There's a current fence around that garden.
Yeah, the posts stay there. They just put up the
like a chicken wire or something.
yeah,
like that.
yeah, whatever we want to call that. They're not fence panels, but okay. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, Councilmember Palmer, your motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion authorizing execution of the purchase agreement to transfer lots 1 through 2, block 1, lots 23 through 26, block 10 of Homestead Trails, first replat to First Homes Properties.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Palmer.
That's the action that was requested.
Okay, Councilmember Kirkpatrick.
Thank you. I'm against this motion for the basic fact that we are just not in the business of just providing housing. We are in the business of the council to provide a sustainable community that's safe, that offers amenities to our public, to our residents. And when you look at what this garden does for this community, the folks to the south and the folks to the west and southwest of this particular development, it's huge. This garden doesn't just feed this neighborhood, it feeds, as the speaker at the very beginning mentioned, numerous households. It also, at this location, you can see how prominent it is at the southwest corner of King Court and 16th Avenue Southeast. If you go to the west, at the west end of King Court, you are basically putting a garden in a place where there will be no passersby. You're putting it in a place that actually has a lot more water flow, and it's going to become more difficult to produce food in an area that has more water in it, standing water. I actually think the soil is going to be excellent with the amount of organic material that's there, with the prairie that's been existed. So that could be one benefit of moving the garden, just to be unbiased and but we are taking. You shut my microphone off by accident. Wow, cool. They work. So we're basically taking our sustainability and resiliency platform that we again tout, all for just one of the spokes of the wheel of just housing. 2 families can move into this lot, yet, I should say lots, the double lots there on the corner, yet this space is a public space that cuts down on crime. This space is a space that provides foods to upwards of 50 families per season. This space is a gathering space for numerous cultures, immigrants, refugees, and some of us Rochester natives. And this space also is the foundation of community, award-winning, also receiving city grants through our neighbors and an award through RPU and Olmsted County for environmental benefits. So I see us making a very single-sided vote for housing only and not looking at the greater potential of neighborhoods that we want to promote, of communities that we want to promote. All for just 2 homes. And I'm against that. That is the type of a decision that does not serve our broader community well. And if this is a precedent that we're going to set, I think that it's wrong. Thank you.
Thank you for your passionate comments, Councilmember Kirkpatrick. I know how much this means to you, and just having a background in public health, how much community gardens mean for the health of a community, the vibrancy of a neighborhood, the engagement of a neighborhood. So I've really struggled with this one as well. Ultimately, I landed on having 2 families move into this space is a wonderful thing. They have access to this wonderful neighborhood of vibrant and engaged and supportive neighbors, or 2 families, 6 families hopefully, but 2 in this particular part. And what a gift we can support those families and hopefully having access to home ownership through the program we're providing, and just great neighbors. So I'm hoping it's a really positive thing, and I'm hoping that this new garden gets off the ground with a lot of support and engagement, and is a wonderful space, even if it's not in the ideal location anymore. But I hear you, and I care, and think we still need the housing. Any other comments? Councilmember Keen?
Yeah, I was gonna, just in perspective, these ones are difficult on us. But this goes back about 3 years. And when we first started talking about what are the properties we have? And again, the early discussions was, no, this wasn't city property. This was like somehow gifted, or was part of the development when this happened, and it wasn't city property. And once we got through that and kind of unwound that and what parkland was and what other things was, and that it truly was owned by the city, I think that was a painful process to go through. I'm gratified to see that we are at least able to work towards I don't know, not a compromise as much as an alternative of being able to carve out we're lucky to have park space so close by. And hopefully that this will be kind of a thing that we do care about these other things. And we do care about the fact that these are cool neighborhoods. These people really pull together and they take a lot of pride in their community. And we ought not rain on that. At the same time, I do look at it as when it's city property and our priorities talk about housing, and we have alternatives for what the land is being used for. I think that's the responsible thing for a council to do.
Councilmember Dennis.
I also think, Councilmember Kirkpatrick, that this is a wonderful thing to have gardens, community gardens. The more we can get people places of belonging and help with mental health and connections, so vitally important for so many people who are battling hidden struggles with sadness and depression and loneliness. So I see the huge benefit for the community garden, and I really hope that people can work together and make things still part of the community, even if there isn't that space. Because I also agree with President Carlson, where there are families that are not able to come speak today because they don't have homes right now. They're future generations, for generations to come, people that can live in those homes that right now might be living in their, well, they can't live in their car. It's illegal. But when I was in the school district, it's not funny. It's very horrendous that it's illegal to live in your, but when I worked for the school district, kids were living in their cars and coming to school, and there was children who had no homes. And what we have done what we have done with the people experiencing homelessness situation, what we have done with not always supporting housing where we should be. This is a small step, and the people who are going to be living in those homes who don't have maybe the opportunity, they can't come up here and speak and say, please, 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 this is important. And so I just cannot, in any good conscience, not vote for more homes in the crisis that we have.
Right, final comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, motion carries with Councilmember Kirkpatrick voting nay.
Should we take a little break?
Yep, let's take a meet back at 9:05.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Formally F12 from the contract with Newman Monson Inc. for design architect services for the North Broadway Park and Ride. Go ahead, Councilmember Dennis.
Thank you. I went back and I didn't see this email sent about me pulling the item. So when was asked about pulling the item, I did pull it at 1 o'clock, but I don't believe.
I just asked if there were any other items besides F12 because you were looking into a couple other items, so I was just clarifying.
Oh, okay. Well, to my knowledge, I didn't receive the email, so I didn't know if the email was sent to city council, because usually there is an email by
Yep,
from
there was.
Allison Zelms to say what items are pulled.
Yes, it was sent to the entire city council group
Oh, I did not receive
at about 1:08.
that. Well, maybe we need to, I'll look.
I'm
into the-
sure that you received it.
Well, if you'd like to look, and if you're sure I received it, you can look and see that I.
Maybe we
Was that
can just go
150?
ahead with that.
What was your reason for pulling F12?
I just want to say if all, council is not all receiving emails, that's something we should look into. So, yes, I pulled the item, because I know there's some stuff sent in an email, earlier about the percentage of, it was a 12.5%, a little higher interest rate. There's some, I'm really just wondering about the process of competitive bidding, what was done to, we're looking at federal dollars, but there's still, taxpayer dollars. When you look at something for over $1 million for such a project that we want to ensure is, going to be benefiting all citizens, there's a lot of concern about it might not be, free for all citizens. So how it's designed, the architecture, things that are making up the rapid transit, I think is really important to look at from the beginning before money has been spent. So I wanted a little more clarification, maybe make it public what was sent to all the council about the percentages, and then this is, I didn't pull F11, but this one was of course with the dollar amount attached to it. So I pulled F12. I just would like to see what competitive bidding was done, what kind of oversight's being done, and if council has say in some of the design and architecture to make sure that residents across the city, including Ward 6 and places, they can come and park for free so that they truly can ride the rapid transit without cost. Because if it's not that way, we cannot say it's a free fare system. We're having tax dollars from across the city paying for maintenance.
Just point of order, this isn't on the rapid transit line. This is by the rec center.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep.
Yep.
Well, okay, I'm getting park
Yep.
and ride. Okay, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'm getting all over the place. But I just want to see how the, just making sure every bit of this is, I'm sorry, the bonding project. I'm jumping around from the email I just read. The projects are always competitive bidding, and that we do make it so that everyone in Rochester can be able to have free fare to be able to get back and forth and ride the rapid transit when that is completed. Thank you.
So this item is specifically about the North Broadway Park and Ride. So let's stick to the questions you had about the contract and future conversations about.
Just to clarify, but
rapid
they do tie together though, because
No, that's not the
people are
same
bringing them
project.
down. People are coming to downtown so they can ride the rapid transit.
This is
And-
not related to rapid transit. Those are other discussions. So if you want Ms. Zhang to respond to the specific bid on design services for the North.
Well,
North
of course, yes,
Parking
we
Ride,
want to
this
make
is-
competitive bidding on all of our projects.
ahead.
Please, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Ia Shang, Interim Transit and Parking Director. Councilmember Dennis, Council President, council members. The North Broadway Park and Ride went through an RFQ, or not RFQ, RFP process, request for proposal, just like any other projects that we have for transit and the city. It went through a competitive proposal process where it had an opening date and a closing date. We had two proposals that came in. It was evaluated with 5 evaluators on the evaluation panel with the criterias as set forth in the RFP, looking at the proposer's qualifications, experience, and so forth. And so that went through that process. And then like I said, there's two proposers, and then through that process, one is recommended.
Okay, Councilmember Palmer?
I got a couple questions then, and it's an interesting one um, we're not taking the low bid. Is that correct?
Actually, two of them, the two proposals came in very close. It is the low bid.
Kimberly Horn is $3,000 less, or did we go with Kimberly Horn?
No, we're proposing Newman Monson.
Okay. So the following bids were received complying with related advertisements for bids contain an amount of for contingency, and then number two is Kimberly Horn, and they were $3,000 less.
Yes, I apologize. I take that back. It's not low bid. The request for proposal is not a low bid. It's a best value based on the criterias that were set in the proposal. And so those proposals were the project understanding, approach and timeline, company background, experience and reference, the qualifications of the key personnel, work plan, and the project cost and fiscal stability. So the two proposals came in very close, but through the evaluation of it, through references and background, Newman Monson was the one that was chosen and recommended.
Okay, I mean, Kimberly Horn has done work in Rochester before, and I mean, reputation wise, I don't, what what reference or what did we get that says that? I know $3,000 isn't a lot of money, but still, it's the low bid. I would assume we'd want to take that unless there's something glaring that's not. And is there details that what's glaring?
Right. So the evaluation isn't based on the low bid. It was typically what happens is you put the cost, you review that last, and you review everything before that based on the criteria that I set forth. And then you look at their cost proposal. So in that, you then review their proposal and see if there's any like discrepancies or anything that is not responsive to the bid, and they were responsive to the bid. So it's acceptable.
So what you just told me is that they're both responsible and they both meet the criteria. And I'm assuming they both could fit the timeline you had. Am I correct on that?
Right. How these are done is we look at their proposal minus the cost. And through that proposal, then you look at the criteria that you set forth, and through interviews, there was interviews that were done also, presentations by both companies. And through that, then you pick with the best value one. Then you take a look at their cost proposal.
How could I just add a little bit of clarification to this? So this isn't like a construction bid where you have the deliverable at the end of X type of facility with this scope of work that's been already outlined by the professional service. This is a professional services contract. So most of those that come in, we do a different amount of evaluation to determine, is this professional service, while they may have worked on something else, the ideal company to be working on this specific type of design, and then construction management based on the type of funding, the type of work, the timeline, what they've done in the past. Have they been working in these types of environments? Do they have environmental? Do they have traffic study analysis as part of what they can do? And we then look at the price. If one was $1 million more than the other, that may have been a different decision based on the cost criteria. But unlike a specific bid for constructing a road or for amount of asphalt for pavement overlay, that's a lowest responsive and responsible bidder. This is the best value, and it's typically done related to professional services like design, architecture, or the construction management part of projects.
So it's in front of us as a city council. If I made the motion to accept the Kimberly Horn bid because it's cheaper, is that within our prerogative to do that as a city council? Or is that not?
It's our prerogative, but that's again staff's formal process for reviewing based on their criteria. Which it sounds like they've vetted very thoroughly.
You may get a challenge from one of the respondents.
Well, there's just two of them.
Right. So the one that you didn't select that was recommended could technically challenge that.
But what we've been told is that they met the same criteria.
Oh, no, we,
No, what you've been told is that they reviewed like 7 criteria and that with $3,000 difference in cost on a about $1.3 million design and construction management services contract, that all other things being considered, that only one of those is priced, that they felt that this would be the best value.
next.
All right, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution awarding the contract to Newman, Munson.
Second.
Councilmember Keen, you have the floor, and then Councilmember Wall may have had an additional question.
Do you want to do that first?
Great.
Again, the discussion we're having right now says we're the same on this, but what I saw in my package was a side-by-side rating of people going through the packages and rating them. And it wasn't dramatic, but it was clear that one package was higher quality than the other. And that's really what drove the staff recommendation from the way I read the packet. The $3,000 was considered generally the same. Like Councilmember Palmer, I do like to look at companies that are local, have local office and that we've done business with before, but that shouldn't always carry the day.
Okay, Councilmember Wall?
Could you help me understand the evaluation panel summary that was sent along with the item in the scoring and the ranking? The scoring, it would appear to me that 2 people scored Kimberly Horn higher, 3 scored Newman Monson higher. But then when you get over to the ranking, somehow Raider 1, who scored Kimberly Horn higher, Kimberly Horn turned out number 2. I don't understand how that would have happened.
Hi, Council. I was actually one of the raters on here, and so I sat in on the panel. I was in on the interviews. I'd have to study this a little more closely because I'm not exactly sure what I'm just looking at it. So you're saying Raider 5's numbers don't match, and I'm wondering if that's just a,
Well, if you just look at Raider 1,
Right.
Kimberly Horn is 87, Newman Munson is 85. That would seem to indicate to me that Kimberly Horn was 1, Newman Munson 2, and that would change the count of number 1s down below to 2 to 3.
I see.
Clearly, Newman Munson was more highly rated by 3 out of 5, but not 4 out of 5. Would that be correct?
I can't remember the exact ratings. I was just an individual rater, but I can tell you that I know when we did the summary and the scoring, we, was determined that they were a higher rater. And I would also say, I know the question about local, I know they had some local firms that were also part of their team that's going to be working on it. So it wasn't just, just that they're an out-of-town firm.
President Carlson, if I might just add some additional, typically when you have a scoring and a ranking, it's a checks and balances. So you have your scoring, you go through, you're evaluating, you have a rubric of which you're evaluating the proposal, you associate, 1 to 4 points, whatever that rubric looks like. And at the end of that, you tally up your score, but then as a reviewer, you're also asked to then give your ranking of the proposals so that it's checks and balances. So you can see any deviations in how people applied the rubric and how they overall ranked the proposal. So, I mean, we're talking about 2 points difference between the case of the Raider 1 that you mentioned. So that's the checks and balances between both doing a scoring and a ranking against proposals by the committee in this process.
Ms. Turi?
Yeah, we just had the team check. It's a typo, so apologize.
It's a typo. Okay. Palmer?
Well, first of all, I didn't say anything about local. I don't know if either one of these companies are local or
Oh,
not.
I
So
thought it-
that was not part of I didn't say anything about local. So I don't know if they are or not. But I mean, if we're getting information that's not right and it's a typo, that makes it hard to make a decision.
Just on the one, well, I didn't put this together, but just on, I was there when we did the ranking, the numbers, I'm feeling very solid on those. It looks like just this table here had the typo in it.
Well, to me, I mean, what you're doing is it's your opinion of people who do a presentation. It's not a scientific, it's not just low bid gets it and they're all qualified bidders. I mean, that to me is the best value is they're qualified bidders. That's what you should be doing and the low bid should take the bid is.
As a consultant for the past 11 years and being rated on these types of scales, this is a practice that is widely used and have experts reviewing what the qualifications are, what the proposed process is, all these different criteria, and they have to make their best judgment on who would be the best fit for the city. And one of the factors, it's often assigned a certain percentage, is cost, but it is not the factor. There are many considerations that staff are assessing to see what is the best fit for the city. So you're saying that from your outside perspective, Kimley Horn is the better fit,
I'm just saying that they're the lowest bid and they're both qualified.
but they're barely the lowest bid, and that isn't what staff is saying. They're saying after their thorough review.
What percentage of lower bid is it? If it was 10 grand, would that worry you? Would
Point of
30
order here, point of order. I don't think these discussions back and forth on council is productive. We should work through the chair and speak to the whole council.
My point is, this is a very commonly used process. Our staff went through a rigorous approach, came back with a recommendation. I don't understand what the problem is. It's close in cost. Cost was one consideration. This is not a process where we have to follow guidelines of taking the lowest bidder. This is not that.
So,
Councilmember Keen.
so Councilmember Palmer has made a point that we could have done this just as a pure bid. I wouldn't agree with that. I don't think he's yet said that he thinks we should go a different way than what the staff recommendation. He's just calling into question. I think he's done that like respectfully, and I think it's time for us to vote.
Councilmember Dennis, did you have one final comment? Or I don't think you commented.
I haven't, I just proposed that, I mean, I haven't commented.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm glad to hear the robust discussion. This is good to challenge this because I do agree with Councilmember Palmer that cost is not my dollars that's being spent, it's the taxpayer dollars. So we need to really look at that being a huge significant factor in bids because I mean, there's so many organizations and projects and you can say, well, this is, what pocket is this money coming? It's taxpayer dollars. So, and we need to be careful and good stewards of every tax dollar. So I do think that is a consideration. I understand typos. You can read my email. I have a lot of typos. So, I mean, I feel like small errors and stuff are, that happens, but I do think the process of competitive bidding needs to be more transparent and there's been so many projects, if we go back, that haven't even got a second bid. We just, we take what we get. And I think that needs to be looked at and cast a wider net and get more bids before we, make a decision. So I just because of this uncertainty, I don't think I can go with the higher bid. That wouldn't go well with my allegiance to saving tax dollars. But I do also want to make one note. I do want to pull, because I started this section out kind of, I'm not, looking at emails and looking at things and got a little confused. But I did just, we all did, I think, received an email at 9:09 from Ms. Zelms saying, my apologies, I did make an error and forgot to include the city council on the blind carbon copy. So I just wanted to say this is a kind of a teachable moment for everyone when people have lived experiences. Instead of second guessing or the word gaslighting, I would say, please, let's pause and double check ourselves before we accuse someone of not having their lived experience being real. And that's where a lot of things in our society have gone wrong. Everything from racism to discrimination.
Okay.
So
All right. All in
just want to
favor?
note that email was sent. I appreciate that from the city administrator for sending that email and apologizing. Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
All right, motion carries 6-1 with Councilmember Dennis voting nay. Right, we will move on to our first reading or an ordinance first reading. Mr. Spindler Craig, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. Item J1, an ordinance annexing to the city of Rochester approximately 47.41 acres located at northeast corner of 55th Street Northwest and 18th Avenue Northwest. Moving on to the second reading, item K1, an ordinance creating and enacting Chapter 12-11 of Title 12 of the Rochester Code of Ordinances relating to the regulation of non-essential water usage upon declaration of a critical water deficiency as authorized by Minnesota Statute Section 103G.291 subdivisions 1 and 2.
Any questions? Motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Councilmember Palmer, you have the floor. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. All right, Councilmember Palmer, you have other business?
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you. And this will only take a couple minutes, but I just want to clarify some points brought up about the dam modification at Silver Lake. The Friends of Silver Lake is a group of Rochester residents who care about Silver Lake and the park, and they volunteer their time and resources to care for the park and the lake. So what have the Friends of Silver Lake done? A few examples: paid for and planted flowers at Silver Lake Park, watered them and maintained them over the years. They have power washed the trail around the lake to remove the goose debris. After the bathrooms were closed due to vandalism, they volunteered to lock them up at night, stopping the damage. They raised the money and had volunteers replace the East Park shelter roof at a cost of more than $10,000. This group of volunteers is 100 people strong, has accomplished dozens of projects worth thousands of dollars, and without any thank you from the city. They are criticized with foul mouths for their time and effort spent because they care. I'm gonna look at some history here. In July 1978, my grandmother lost everything in the flood. In October of that year, she was on the front page of the Post Bulletin with her photo, holding a sawdust doll her grandfather had made for her, which was destroyed in a flood. In July 1978, I worked at the Kaler Hotel with Hank and Steve Bellman, who lost their foundations like many people did in Rochester during the flood. If you listen to Casey Reed, he will tell you about walking down 8th Avenue Southeast that night and hearing the haunting sounds of foundations collapsing, whoosh sound it would make. So ask yourself, why are people so cynical about what's going on? Well, there's a few examples. The track at Soldiers Field proposed to be shortened and pave it and bank it the wrong way. People rallied to do the correct thing. The water fixture on First Avenue Southwest took 2 years to get done to work correctly. Why was it done? Well, we received a grant. The 6th Street ramp, I'm not gonna say anything more about that. The city received a grant for vegetation around Silver Lake. Look at it today, weeds, and we cannot see the lake, and it's unmanageable and not welcoming. We have delayed the dredging of Silver Lake, which is part of the city's flood control system. Why are we seeking grant money for fish habitat? For 3 years, we had not been able to get state bonding to modify the existing dam. Here's some just basic facts. Some current and past city council members want nothing more than a river. You don't have to imagine it. You can look at Lake Shady. This grant request is only for Silver Lake Dam modification. RPU has used this lake for over 70 years and has benefited from its use. The 2023 sales tax dollars cannot be used to remove the dam as per last year's ballot question. The Broadway crossing at 14th Street will be much safer after this year's rebuild. The grant has no effect on that crossing. The walkway along Broadway is 1 foot wider than the new bridge at Elton Hills Drive. This grant request has no funds available for the North Trail, in which the city does not have access to or own all the property around the lake. With all this misunderstandings, why not have a public meeting as we did for other items such as Elton Hills Drive, Goff, and North Broadway? I am responsible for listening and understanding, and I intend to continue to do so well. We should not use our public profiles to criticize people who generally care about Rochester. And as someone once said, remember, everyone is entitled to an opinion, just not their own facts. Thank you for listening.
Okay, Councilmember Dennis?
Is that a call to action? I guess, is that all, Councilmember Palmer?
We had other business.
Point of order. We're not having discussions up here. We present to the community.
I'm sorry. I thought there was going to be a kind of a discussion about having a study session or some kind of, okay, my mistake, sorry. So I just wanted to amplify Earth Day. I think every day should be Earth Day. There's events, of course, happening in town. And I did have some questions. I think I'm going to follow up. I know there's been talk about the Police Oversight Commission, and I'm going to follow up, I think, with Chief Franklin and not bring it up here, but I did want to say that that has been heard and looking into that issue. And then I also wanted to address, and I know this has been brought up before, but we talked about like at the beginning of the meeting, President Carlson says, please direct all comments to the presiding officer, which I think is a wonderful thing to state so that people who are coming to speak in other business, I'm sorry, in open comment, can speak, to for, not to somebody. And I think that's great. There's been a lot of concerns about emails because we get mass emails that are sent to everybody. And there's a confusion on who responds to those. I have brought up how the school district has done this. The chair of the school district will respond to those emails. If I see someone's address, if I see it's Ward 6, I'm immediately responding. But there is confusion because people have asked, well, I've sent this email, I didn't get a response from any council member. And my notion is, well, we get, like, do we respond to every email? Does each resident get 7 responses plus the mayor or whoever? I mean, is there a person that should be designated? I feel for consistency of information, having someone specifically might be good, just so that no resident is left behind. So that was my question. I guess I wanted some clarification because of concerns residents have had where they don't receive responses when sent to the entire council. Anyway, just to ask my colleagues if there's some kind of clarification, because of course, if someone in Ward 6, I'm no question, I'm going to respond to their inquiry. But when you get a huge amount of emails, let's say for a pool or a golf course or some kind of issue where it is very difficult to respond in the way I would want to respond to each individual email. Is that something that maybe we could look into at also a future area where we can see if we can have consistency, efficiency, and make sure every resident's voice has been heard and responded to? So that's my thought. If there's any follow-up? No. I know that I've sent several emails and text messages, and I do not get responses from my colleagues because they either have been told or do not want to respond to policy issues that have to deal with, for example, the mayor's consultant or people experiencing homelessness or the environment or whatever the issue is. I just want to say, I think the role of a council member and any leader in the city is to have respect for each other and to work for the betterment of our city. And some of this petty politics, I believe, is not good for Rochester. So I would appreciate not being dismissed when emails for the betterment of our city have been sent. So that's another thing. Thank you.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thanks, we're adjourned.